Chapter 2644, Absorbing Divine Will. The gigantic statues erected atop light-forged cities' tall walls gave off an indescribable sense of majesty and oppression. When Faux and the other Zero-Wing members got within 100 yards of these statues, they immediately sensed a powerful pressure weighing down on their minds. For a moment, they felt as if their bodies no longer belonged to themselves as their consciousness started to waver. They were like a small boat sailing across a stormy ocean. Even the slightest mistake could result in their demise. What a powerful mental assault. Just this one strike already makes me feel as if I just executed an advanced combat technique. If this continues, I'll probably exhaust my concentration in no time at all, Gentle Snow commented, frowning as she sensed the mental pressure from the statues. She had realized that these statues were extraordinary when she saw them from outside the city. After all, just looking at these statues from a great distance had already taken a toll on her concentration. Now that she stood so close to these statues, she realized that they were even more frightening than she initially thought. Even without looking at these statues, her mind was subject to a mental suppression that depleted her concentration. Guild leader, don't tell me the training you mentioned will take place here? Aqua Rose objected as she turned to Faux. That's right. We'll be training here, Faux said as he smiled and nodded. Guild leader, the mental assault of these statues is too powerful. Let alone using skills and spells, even executing basic mana control is a problem. It is impossible for us to conduct any training here, Aqua Rose argued. When she tried manipulating and gathering her mana earlier, the statue's mental assault had interrupted her. The incessant mental assault would make using any skills or spells here impossible. Everyone else nodded in agreement with Aqua Rose's words. It might be fine if the mental assault was something ordinary, but the statue's mental assault threatened to knock them unconscious. Against such a powerful and persistent mental assault, even controlling their physical bodies would be a problem. Rather than waste time here, it would be much better if they went to one of the hotels in the city to practice their mana control. The training efficiency there would be several hundred times better than here. It is indeed difficult to train mana control here, but I didn't bring you all here for that. Instead, we're here to train our concentration, Faux explained. Concentration training. How is that possible? Stunned by Feng's words, Aqua Rose could not help eyeing him skeptically. At this moment, let alone Aqua Rose, Gentle Snow and the others were likewise dubious, suspecting that Faux was joking with them. In God's domain, it was common knowledge that raising the concentration attribute was much more difficult than raising the stamina attribute. Of course, while the difficulty of increasing one's concentration was high, the returns one could gain from improved concentration were also immense, far outstripping those from improved stamina. This was especially true for magical class players and expert players. The help they could gain from the concentration attribute was dozens of times greater than what they could gain from any other basic or hidden attribute. This was because concentration affected players' control over their physical bodies and mana, aside from being the resource necessary to execute combat techniques. However, even now, there were only two known methods to permanently improve one's concentration. The first was to raise one's tier, while the other was to raise one's life rating. Hence, any item that could provide a temporary boost to a player's concentration was incredibly valuable and sold for at least 10 times the price of similarly ranked items. The most inferior item that provided concentration would be at the dark gold rank. However, even at such a price, the various major powers would frantically contest for any of such items that appeared on the market. Now, however, Faux was telling them that it was possible to directly improve their concentration attribute. Their skepticism was only natural. Normally, raising the concentration attribute is indeed an incredibly difficult task. However, the statues here are extraordinary. The mental assault you're sensing is actually divine will. So long as you clash directly with this divine will, you'll be able to absorb a subtle amount of it, which, in turn, will improve your concentration slightly, Faux explained, chuckling. If I have to point out the most valuable features inside Light-Forged City, then these statues will have to be one of them. However, the divine will of these statues can be considered a consumable. As players absorb it, the available volume will decrease. While these statues will recover their divine will over time, who knows how long it will take for them to recover. If we miss out on this opportunity, it's unlikely we'll come across another one like this in the future. So, that's why you had us spend all our contribution points on concentration recovery potions, Aqua Rose exclaimed in realization. If Violet Sword's people find out about this, they'll most likely send all their peak experts to train here, regardless of the cost. After all was said and done, although Zero Wing had signed a partnership contract with Violet Sword and now possessed 100 entry slots to the Ancient's secret land, Zero Wing did not have a base of operations inside Violet Light City. The resources Zero Wing could obtain from the Ancient's secret land definitely couldn't compare to what Violet Sword could get. Violet Sword would definitely be able to secure more contribution points in Light Forged City than Zero Wing could. If Violet Sword found out about the statue's secret, it would definitely send a large number of experts to absorb the divine will here, rapidly depleting it and leaving only scraps for Zero Wing's members. Alright, everyone, start focusing your mind to resist the mental assault. The closer you approach these statues, the stronger the mental assault becomes. Meanwhile, the stronger the mental assault you resist, the greater the improvements you will gain. However, make sure not to be too greedy. If your consciousness leaves your body too many times, it will end up weakening the absorption rate. You might even fail to absorb any divine will. So, make sure to train at an appropriate distance, Shifeng said as he looked at the others. Upon hearing Shifeng's instructions, Aqua Rose and the others sat down excitedly and started resisting the mental assault of the statue before them. Ordinary experts treated concentration as an attribute that determined the number of times they could use combat techniques. However, for players like themselves who had fully unlocked their mana bodies, the concentration attribute held an entirely different meaning. By improving their concentration, they could improve their mana control, which would, in turn, allow them to execute more complex actions using mana. With this, they could accomplish things that they previously couldn't. One of the simplest examples would be breaking through the mana body's 100% threshold. With their present concentration, their mana control was at their limit. However, if they wished to break through the 100% threshold, they needed to be capable of controlling even more mana. Now that an opportunity to break through the mana body's 100% threshold was right before them, they did not wish to waste even a second. However, after everyone attempted to resist the statue's mental assault, their original excited expressions disappeared, replaced by solemnity. Their complexions had similarly turned pale. The difference between enduring and resisting the mental assault is actually this large? Aqua Rose nearly collapsed on her back after her first attempt. She had expended roughly 5% of her concentration after resisting just one mental assault. Her consciousness had even momentarily left her body, making her lose all control over herself. The experience was extremely uncomfortable and completely different from when she was just passively enduring the mental assaults. At this moment, everyone, aside from Shifeng, promptly retreated from their original positions, not daring to continue resisting the mental assault at the 90-yard mark. However, even Shifeng did not fare much better than everyone else. Although he had managed to resist the mental assault, the amount of divine will he absorbed was far from ideal. Moreover, just a single attempt had cost him 1/40th of his concentration. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. After resisting the mental assaults for another 2 minutes, Shifeng scarcely had any concentration remaining and had no choice but to consume a concentration recovery potion. With the boost provided by the potion, his concentration recovery rate just barely surpassed his consumption rate. After training like this for around an hour, Shifeng opened his eyes and looked at the nearest statue, with a depressed expression. During this past hour or so, his concentration had indeed improved, however, the improvement was basically negligible. In fact, if not for him being at the domain realm and having an accurate grasp over his own body and mental state, he wouldn't have noticed this improvement at all. If he continued at this rate, his concentration would be nowhere near the Tier 4 standard even after using all his master concentration recovery potions and training for 20 hours here. At this rate, my concentration won't reach the Tier 4 standard even after the various superpowers peak experts have already started challenging their Tier 4 promotion quest. Shifeng could not help a bitter smile at this situation. It's no wonder hardly any expert players would rely on divine will to improve their concentration standard. However, just as Faux was about to focus his mind to resist the next mental assault, Violet Cloud, who sat behind him, suddenly stood up and walked up to the 80-yard mark, then took a seat there. Chapter 2645, Advanced Bronze Combat Technique. Upon seeing Violet Cloud resisting a mental assault at the 80-yard mark, Aqua Rose and the others goggled in shock. After all, there were no changes to Violet Cloud's expression. It was obvious that the 80-yard mental assault posed no problem for her. In fact, she could probably move even closer to the statue. She actually managed to improve her mental condensation by so much already? At this moment, even Faux was astonished when he looked at Violet Cloud. If players wished to absorb divine will quickly, they could rely on mental condensation, aside from items that aided in concentration recovery. The more condensed one's mental state was when clashing with the mental assault of a divine will, the greater one's absorption rate of divine will would become. Only, there was no concrete technique to allow players to condense their mental state because a person's mental state was insubstantial. Players could only sense it and not touch it directly. The only thing players could do was focus their attention and resist distractions. At this moment it was obvious that Violet Cloud had gained improvements in mental condensation, which strengthened her mental state significantly. As a result, she could resist a stronger mental assault. Otherwise, there was no way she could withstand the 80-yard mental assault so easily. Faux had long known that Violet Cloud was very talented. After all, in the past, she had relied on her own strength to reach Tier 6, when over 90% of the geniuses supported by the various superpowers had ended up getting stuck at Tier 5, never to cross the final threshold. One could easily imagine how frightening Violet Cloud's talent was for her to accomplish this impossible feat without any support. However, Violet Cloud's talents had still surpassed Feng's expectations, despite him knowing the girl's past. This was clearly everyone's first time executing mental condensation. Not even Faux had learned any techniques or methods to better execute mental condensation. However, after training for just a little over an hour, Violet Cloud had actually achieved a breakthrough already. Her talent was truly terrifying. Meanwhile, Violet Cloud's sudden breakthrough spurred everyone's fighting spirit. They immediately took a few steps forward in order to test whether they could resist a stronger mental assault or not. In this situation, even Faux himself could not help advancing an additional 5 yards, seating himself 85 yards away from the statue before him. However, Faux instantly paled after resisting a mental assault at the 85-yard mark. His consciousness also turned blurry for quite some time. I advanced by just an additional 5 yards. Yet I'm actually losing nearly 10% of my concentration per hit? I also barely absorbed any divine will. Sure enough, mental condensation isn't something that can be improved on so easily. Faux smiled bitterly as he looked at Violet Cloud resisting the 80-yard mental assaults with ease. He had expected his mental state to have improved by quite a bit after experiencing so many mental assaults at the 90-yard mark. However, it seemed that it was merely wishful thinking. It seems I can only return and slowly accumulate concentration, Faux thought, shaking his head, and stood up to return to his original location. As he got to his feet, the statue before him released another wave of mental pressure. This time, though, he did not try to resist it, just passively endured it. After enduring this mental assault, Faux immediately felt his consciousness blur slightly. His control over his body also became slightly sluggish. Overall, though, he fared a lot better than with active resistance. Despite facing the same mental assault, there's such a huge difference between passively enduring and actively resisting. If the effects of actively resisting the mental assault were the same as the result I just experienced, I would most likely be able to move within 30 yards of the statue. Faux could not help but sigh ruefully when he sensed the effects of passive endurance. When he reached his original position, another mental assault washed over him, nearly making him lose his footing. After experiencing this mental assault, though, he paused as a spark of inspiration flashed across his eyes. So, that's the case. Why didn't I think of this before? Faux clenched his fists as realization dawned upon him. He then turned to the nearby statue and thought, the reason why the effects of passively enduring the mental assaults are so subdued is simply that I gave up control over my body and allowed my mental state to go along with the divine will during the brief instant of collision. However, when I actively resist the mental assault, I'm struggling against the divine will to retain control over my body. The concentration consumed in doing so is naturally much greater. With sufficiently high control over my own body, I should have a much easier time resisting the divine will. After thinking up to this point, Faux immediately sat down and started testing his theory. Previously, he had been fully focused on using his mental state to resist the divine will's influence. Now, he chose to spread his focus across his entire body instead, to prevent anything from influencing his control over it. In the next moment, another mental assault arrived. Although Faux's complexion paled slightly, a smile formed on his face. Sure enough, Faux grew excited when he sensed the amount of concentration he had just lost. Originally, he would lose around 1/40th of his maximum concentration when resisting a 90-yard mental assault. Now, however, he had lost only 1/50th of his concentration. Although the improvement was minor, he had, at the very least, taken the first step in the correct path of resisting the mental assaults. Following which, Faux retreated further back and sat down just outside of the range of the statue's mental assaults. He then considered ways to further strengthen the control he had over his body, to spread his focus across his entire body as much as possible. Or to put it in another way, he tried to exert all his muscles in one direction. That way, he could achieve maximum control over his body. However, this was Faux's first time doing such a thing. Even though he had already reached the domain realm and achieved precision control over his 5 senses and physical body, he had never tried exerting every muscle in his body in a single direction. When he actually tried doing so, he discovered what a challenge he had set up for himself. No matter how hard he tried, he succeeded with less than 10% of his muscles. Sure enough, it really is difficult. It would be great if I had a combat technique that could help adjust my muscles' direction of exertion. As Faux tried exerting every one of his muscles in the same direction, he felt that this feat was even more difficult than executing a bronze combat technique. After all, a bronze combat technique utilized only a portion of his muscles. Moreover, the utilized muscles wouldn't move in the same direction either. That's it. Inspiration dawned upon him as his thoughts wandered in the direction of combat techniques. Since there's no such combat technique in existence, I can just create one. Even if I can't utilize every muscle in my body, it will still be good enough if I can utilize a greater portion. After thinking so, he started creating such a combat technique. Compared to advanced combat techniques, the combat technique Faux was conceptualizing was much more difficult. However, with his extensive combat experience and ability to integrate advanced combat techniques into his every action, albeit just barely, creating such a combat technique wasn't an impossible task. This was just like manipulating the mana inside a magic array. The proper manipulation of the mana of a magic array could boost the magic array's power beyond what it could normally display. Meanwhile, what he needed to do now was to treat a portion of his body as a magic array and his muscles as the mana flowing through this magic array. 1 hour. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU 3 hours. 9 hours. After 10 hours of trial and error, Lightforged City's stable space rippled. At the same time, the sound of a system notification entered Faux's ears, its contents echoing in his mind. System, congratulations. You have created an advanced bronze combat technique. Please name your combat technique. Chapter 2646, Divine Change. What? An advanced bronze combat technique? Faux was stunned when he saw the system notification. The combat technique he had aimed to create this time was only meant to give him better control over his body so that he could resist stronger mental assaults. In his opinion, it would be fortunate if such a combat technique could be deemed an advanced combat technique. However, it turned out he had miraculously created an advanced bronze combat technique. Moreover, he had never even heard of advanced bronze combat techniques. As far as he knew, for combat techniques, what came after the bronze rank was the silver rank, with nothing in between. Hence, he truly could not help his astonishment. Most importantly, this combat technique he had just created couldn't even be considered a complete product. After all, in its current state, this new combat technique merely allowed him to exert a portion of his muscles, nothing more. There were no follow-up moves to convert it into an offensive or defensive technique. At best, it was a semi-finished product. Is it because it is an unfinished technique that the system is unable to give an accurate evaluation, hence, it is labeled an advanced bronze combat technique? While entertaining such thoughts, Faux executed his newly created combat technique and punched at the empty air in front. And indeed, his new combat technique was truly frightening. Thanks to this new technique, just his punch alone destabilized the space before him. This result was notable since he was currently standing inside Light-Forged City, a city that had been strengthened by ancient gods. The space within the city should be extremely stable. Power that could originally destabilize space in the outside world wouldn't necessarily be capable of doing so inside Light-Forged City. In fact, even Tier 5 powerhouses shouldn't think of destabilizing the space here. Nevertheless, the punch he just executed had made the space before him ripple slightly. As a Tier 3 player, he definitely shouldn't be capable of exhibiting such power even with a bronze combat technique. At the very least, the bronze combat technique Lightning Flash he had learned couldn't do so. It seems this combat technique that exerts my muscles in a single direction has considerable potential. It is clearly only a semi-finished product, and I can exert only 15% of my entire body's muscles, at most, yet I can already exhibit such power. If I can complete this technique and use it to exert all my muscles, its power would most likely rival gold combat techniques. When Faux saw the system's evaluation, he immediately realized the possibility of creating a powerful combat technique. Currently, plenty of combat techniques have been found in God's domain already. However, combat techniques at the bronze rank and above were still incredibly rare. Learning these combat techniques was also incredibly difficult, even if players had a legacy tablet. If he could create a silver or gold combat technique and freely distribute it to the guild's core members to learn, then the standard of Zero Wing's experts would rise to a whole new level. As Faux was lost in his thoughts, the system sent him another notification. System, please name your combat technique. If you do not name it, the system will automatically generate a name for it after 10 minutes. A name? After giving the matter some thought, Faux said, since I created this combat technique for the purpose of training using divine will, let's call it divine change. After he named his new technique, he shifted his gaze toward the nearby statue. Currently, Violet Cloud had already advanced to the 60-yard mark. The others had similarly made significant improvements. For example, Aqua Rose, Alluring Summer, and Iluafe were now at the 75-yard mark. As for melee players like Fire Dance, Gentle Snow, and Yen Tianqing, although they fared slightly worse, they had reached the 80-yard mark. Their performance was much better than Feng's. Meanwhile, after Feng observed everyone for a while, Violet Cloud actually stood up from her spot and moved to the 50-yard mark. Her mental condensation's improvement speed was simply inhuman. It seems I have to give my new technique a try. Although it is only a semi-finished product, it should still improve my results by a large margin. Feng could not help a bitter smile when he saw Violet Cloud sit by the 50-yard mark. As the guild leader of Zero Wing, he didn't need to be the best at everything, but he definitely couldn't be the worst. Otherwise, it would simply be humiliating. Following which, Feng moved past the 100-yard mark and slowly walked toward the statue. Meanwhile, the Zero Wing members seated before the statue noticed his arrival and could not help shifting their attention to him. The guild leader is finally prepared to raise his concentration. The sight of Feng entering the range of the Divine Will's mental assaults piqued Aqua Rose's curiosity. Previously, Feng had moved beyond the 100-yard mark and sat quietly in a corner. This situation had confused her and everyone else. They simply could not understand what he was doing. Although they had obtained citizenship in Light-Forged City and gained the qualifications to stay for however long they wanted in the city, the duration of the alchemy array they had to use prevented them from staying inside the ancient secret land for long periods. Hence, every second and minute spent inside Light-Forged City was incredibly precious. However, Faux had actually wasted 10 whole hours doing nothing. I really can't figure out why the guild leader sat there for so long. He even wasted nearly an hour of the precious concentration recovery potion, Kola muttered as he gazed at Faux in confusion. Originally, their time in Light-Forged City was already limited. Now that 10 hours had gone by, they had less than 2 days left. In addition, they had to take a small break once every 2 hours to relax their tense minds. To put it simply, they were pressed for time. Had Faux spent the past 10 hours improving his concentration standard with them, he would have most likely reached the 70 or 80-yard mark already. With the improvement speed at these locations several times better than that at the 90-yard mark, his concentration might even get upgraded to the Tier 4 standard by the time he ran out of Master Concentration Recovery Potions. While everyone was mulling over Feng's actions, Feng arrived at the 85-yard mark. However, he showed no intention of sitting down to train. Instead, he simply stood there quietly as he actively resisted the approaching mental assault. Pang! Upon coming into contact with Feng, the mental assault actually shattered. It shattered? How is this possible? Aqua Rose was stunned when she sensed the mental assault approaching Feng shatter. She turned to stare at Feng. Although they had their eyes shut previously in order to focus their minds while training, they could still clearly sense the mental assault with their minds. When the mental assault came into contact with Feng, it seemed to crash into an immovable wall and shatter. The ensuing ripple from the mental assault shattering was like a flame in darkness. It was difficult not to notice it. Guild leader, what did you do? You can actually shatter that mental assault? Kola asked, unable to suppress his curiosity. The mental assault was intangible. Just trying to actively resist it was already a difficult task. As for shattering the mental assault, that was something none of them had ever considered doing. At this moment, everyone was staring at Feng in confusion. I didn't do anything special. I just tried retaliating against the mental assault. I never thought that it would shatter, Feng said, similarly puzzled by this situation. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. He had merely tried using divine change against the mental assault to test the technique's effects. He never imagined such a result. In the end, the mental assault did not affect him adversely in any way and simply disappeared like a passing breeze. Feng's answer and the calm look on his face rendered Aqua Rose speechless. This explanation was simply too abbreviated. What did he mean by, just retaliating? Meanwhile, after Feng gave his explanation, he promptly stepped closer to the statue, his heart brimming with curiosity about how much progress he could make using divine change. Chapter 2647, Statue's Forbidden Zone. With each step Feng took toward the majestic statue before him, the mental assault coming from it intensified. However, he kept advancing without being affected in the slightest, as if the mental assault was non-existent. 80 yards. 70 yards. 60 yards. After just a short moment, Feng arrived at the 50-yard mark and stood beside Violet Cloud. At this moment, though, his expression turned slightly serious. It was obvious that the statue's mental assaults were starting to affect him. However, everyone also understood that this was not his limit. Is he a monster? He actually caught up to Violet so quickly. Moreover, he's not even at his limit yet. Luofei, who was seated nearby, stared at Feng in shock. Just what did he do during this period to improve so much? Players that had never attempted mental condensation before might not know how much improvement Feng just displayed. However, everyone present, who had been continuously honing their mental condensation and resisting the statue's mental assaults for more than 10 hours now, knew exactly how much Feng had improved. While Shifeng's shattering the mental assault at the 85-yard mark might seem very amazing, the mental assault weakened with distance. The 85-yard mental assault was incomparable to the 50-yard mental assault. In fact, Yi Luofei had doubted that Shifeng could even resist the 50-yard mental assault. As for Violet Cloud, her talent was clear for all to see. Violet Cloud's talent was so great that Yi Luofei found it to be mind-boggling. Hence, when she saw Shifeng's mental condensation standard and improvement speed losing out to Violet Cloud's, she did not find it surprising at all. Moreover, Violet Cloud was a magical class player, which gave her an advantage over melee players when it came to mental condensation. This point was clear from everyone's training results during this period. Therefore, it was very normal for Shifeng to be inferior to Violet Cloud. Now, however, Shifeng had actually surpassed Violet Cloud, shattering even the 50-yard mental assault. This situation was truly surprising. After all, Shifeng had been training his mental condensation outside the 100-yard mark. Trying to improve one's mental condensation at that distance was much more difficult. This was something they had tested for themselves during their break periods. However, even under such a situation, Shifeng had still managed to surpass Violet Cloud. The amount of talent he possessed was simply ludicrous. While Yi Luofei was in a daze, Shifeng had arrived at the 30-yard mark. And upon retaliating against the mental assault here, he stumbled back one step, his complexion immediately turning pale. It seems it's going to be difficult to get any closer than this. The power of the mental assault here is already several times that of the 50-yard mental assault. It's no wonder so many people couldn't reach and cross the 30-yard mark in the past. When Shifeng tried retaliating against the 30-yard mental assault, he had instantly lost 1/15 of his maximum concentration. This was no longer a loss he could afford. In the past, the area within 30 yards of Divine Will statues had been considered a forbidden zone. According to rumors, anyone that managed to train within this zone would see a qualitative leap in their mental condensation standard. Although this improvement would not provide players with a substantial boost in combat power, it would hone their perception of mana to inhuman levels, as well as facilitate the formation of their magic domain when they reached Tier 4. It was even rumored that the improvement one received from training within the Forbidden Zone could provide significant help when challenging the Tier 5 promotion quest. Meanwhile, upon seeing Shifeng finally fail, Aqua Rose and the others could not help a sigh of relief. After all, if Shifeng were to get any closer to the statue, they would really start suspecting that they were severely lacking in talent. Although I can't train efficiently at the 30-yard mark, training at the 35-yard mark isn't a bad option either. With this, I shouldn't need more than 2 days to raise my concentration to the Tier 4 standard. Shifeng could not help but sigh when he looked at the Forbidden Zone before him. However, he wasn't too disappointed. In its current state, divine change was still incomplete. Originally, he thought that he would be fortunate if he could train at the 50-yard mark with the help of the combat technique. After all, he could exert only 15% of his body's muscles in the same direction. He still couldn't unify the strength of the remainder of his body. Hence, he was already quite satisfied with his current results. As for entering the Divine Will's Forbidden Zone, so long as he could perfect divine change, it should not be a problem at all. Following which, Shifeng returned to the 35-yard mark and started absorbing the Divine Will there, improving his concentration. As he continuously absorbed Divine Will and raised his maximum concentration, the number of players that got resurrected and entered Light-Forged City also increased. When the many members of Violet Sword and Azure saw Shifeng and the others sitting in front of one of the statues on the city walls, they were bemused. I really don't know what those people from Zero Wing are doing. They're actually wasting time sitting before a statue. Do they not know that the piece outside has already shattered completely? Crimson Star could not help her puzzlement when she read the report her subordinate sent her regarding the activities of Zero Wing's members. Violet Swords and Azure's members were all doing their best to improve their combat power in Light-Forged City. Zero Wing's members, on the other hand, had wasted 2 whole days doing nothing. Aside from occasionally leaving their position to have a meal at Light-Forged City's restaurants, they had spent all their time sitting before one of the statues erected on the city walls. Rather than coming here to train, Zero Wing's members looked as if they were on vacation. Zero Wing probably has its own considerations. After all, when it comes to peak experts, it is already superior to ordinary superpowers, Wildfighter said. Moreover, after the partnership this time, I heard that Azure plans to ally itself with Zero Wing. Afterward, Zero Wing will have a much smoother path ahead of it. Ally? So what if Azure allies with Zero Wing? Let alone Azure, even some super guilds are failing to cope with the current situation. How can Azure possibly have the time to help Zero Wing? Crimson Star said disdainfully. In addition, peak experts are no longer as effective as they were before. The various powers have already researched plenty of war weapons. The usefulness of Tier 3 players is continuously diminishing. Nowadays, Zerg tactics rule the battlefield. Since guild towns and cities no longer enjoyed the protection of NPC soldiers, guilds had lost their greatest assurance. Players no longer had to fear overly powerful NPC soldiers and were free to cause trouble inside guild towns and cities. This was especially good news for powerful experts and developing powers with limited territory. In fact, according to Violet Sword's intelligence network, over 200 guild towns on the western continent had switched owners since the activation of the Demon God's Chaos Expansion Pack. And while the various superpowers still hadn't suffered any losses due to this expansion pack, that was mainly because of the large number of Tier 3 experts and peak experts they possessed. Zero Wing, however, was significantly inferior to the various superpowers in this regard. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. This isn't something we need to concern ourselves about. Instructor Tori has just sent news that some of the secretly developing superpowers have started stirring recently, so once we complete our training here, he wants us to station our trump card legion in the 2 guild cities closest to level 100 maps as insurance, Wildfighter said. I understand. Once our time here is up, I'll bring the men over, Crimson Star replied, nodding. Meanwhile, as Crimson Star and Wildfighter were conversing, Faux, who was sitting quietly before one of the city wall statues, suddenly opened his eyes. At the same time, an invisible ripple spread out from his body, weakening the Divine Will's mental assault considerably. Success, oh. Chapter 2648, Tier 4 Concentration. When the strange ripple appeared from Feng's body, Aqua Rose and the others present promptly noticed it. At the same time, they felt a mental pressure from Feng that they had never felt before. Although this mental pressure was far weaker than what the Divine Will statues radiated, it was inherently the same. Guild leader, did you break through? Aqua Rose could not help asking as she looked at Feng. Although she understood that Feng had achieved a breakthrough, she still wanted confirmation. The difficulty of raising concentration was far greater than she had expected. Even now, she could sense that she was still far from a breakthrough. Even Violet Cloud, whose mental condensation standard was second only to Feng's, had a long way to go, 30% or so to reach the Tier 4 standard and its concomitant qualitative transformation. I've reached the Tier 4 standard already, Feng said, nodding happily as he focused his mind on experiencing the changes brought about by having his concentration reach the Tier 4 standard. Tier 4. This was a realm that he was never able to reach in the past no matter what he did. Even though only his concentration had reached the Tier 4 standard, for now, it was already more than enough to excite him. In God's domain, Tier 4 was a major turning point for players, a far more important one than when players went from Tier 2 to Tier 3. One could say that more than 99% of Tier 3 players would never be able to reach Tier 4. In order to reach Tier 4, aside from sufficiently high combat standards and equipment standards, one also needed a lot of luck and fortuitous opportunities. If a player lacked any of these factors, the difficulty of reaching Tier 4 would increase exponentially. Now, with Feng's concentration at the Tier 4 standard, his chances of attaining Tier 4 in the future had just increased significantly. Guild leader, what does it feel like to have Tier 4 concentration? Is the difference large? Yan Tianxing asked, curious. Upon hearing Yan Tianqing's question, everyone turned to Shi Feng with inquisitive eyes. It's large. It's very large, Shi Feng answered after giving the matter some thought. You can say that I've already reached a completely different level. The improvement of the concentration attribute would provide a significant increase in a player's control over their physical body and mana. The concentration attribute reaching the Tier 4 standard would even bring about a qualitative transformation. Take the Holy Annihilation mana technique for example. If executing Light Shadow cost him 10 points of concentration previously, then now, it required only 3 points. As for the concentration cost of executing bronze combat techniques, it had dropped even further. Now, he could basically use bronze combat techniques as if they were advanced combat techniques. In addition, even executing Tier 3 skills and spells at a 100% completion rate would probably no longer be difficult. Even breaking through the 100% threshold was entirely doable. Is the difference really that great? Aqua Rose could not help her incredulity. Although I do not wish to say this, the difference is, indeed, like heaven and earth. Right now, in a situation where I have the same basic attributes, I'm certain my current self can defeat my previous self in less than 10 moves, Shi Feng replied, chuckling when he saw the skeptical look Aqua Rose was giving him. Only after his concentration reached the Tier 4 standard did he truly understand how big the gap between Tier 3 and Tier 4 was. It was no wonder the Tier 4 experts in the past could trounce a group of Tier 3 peak experts, with some Tier 4 experts even able to capture a guild town single-handedly. The reason for this wasn't the powerful basic attributes Tier 4 players had but their control over their physical body and mana, which had reached a whole new realm. Even with the same physical body, Shi Feng had now doubled his combat power, at the very least. Moreover, the cost of exertion had been drastically reduced. Now, even Zerg tactics were useless against him. In his current state, he could truly destroy an army of players all by himself. The improvement is that much? Yi Luofei was astonished by Shi Feng's example. Before, their guild leader could already be considered invincible among Tier 3 existences. After all, he had overwhelmed the ancient secret land's Tier 4 region chiefs. Now, however, he was claiming that his Tier 4 concentration would let him defeat his previous self in less than 10 moves. At this point, she no longer dared imagine how powerful he currently was. Even actual Tier 4 players might not be a match for him. Alright, we don't have much time left. Hurry up and continue absorbing the divine will. It'll be quite some time before you can enter here again, Shi Feng said, chuckling as he looked at everyone's yearning expressions. The alchemy array they used lasted only 7 days and had a 10-day cooldown. Even if everyone gained the right to stay in Lightforged City for as long as they wanted, they would still have to leave the city for at least 3 days before they could enter again. In addition, whenever they entered the ancient secret land, they had to spend a lot of time traveling to Lightforged City. Overall, they didn't really have much time to train here. At Shi Feng's reminder, everyone promptly resumed absorbing the Tier 4 divine will the statue before them radiated. Although raising their concentration to the Tier 4 standard was incredibly difficult, just absorbing the divine will would still bring about a quantitative improvement to their concentration. Hence, they naturally couldn't waste the remaining time they had left in Lightforged City. Right, Violet, how close are you to achieving a breakthrough? Oh. Shi Feng asked as he turned to Violet Cloud, who was preparing to resume her training. Just a while ago, Violet Cloud had advanced to the 40-yard mark and was very close to reaching his training spot already. Hence, her absorption rate of divine will was just slightly slower than his. I feel that I need to raise my concentration by another 20% or so before I hit the Tier 3 limit, Violet Cloud replied after sensing the current state of her concentration. Only 20%? That quick? Her answer stunned Shi Feng. She was clearly still around 30% away from reaching the Tier 3 limit just now. He never thought that she could progress so rapidly. Taking out the 2 master concentration recovery potions he had left, he said, I still have 2 unused potions, take them. You're giving them to me? But what about everyone else? Violet Cloud automatically hesitated when she saw the 2 potions in Shi Feng's hand. The Master Concentration Recovery Potion was incredibly valuable. If she had to do quests and slowly accumulate the required contribution points to exchange for them, it would take ages before she would have enough points for one potion. If Faux gave both of his remaining potions to her now, it would be unfair to everyone else. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, take them. You're the closest to achieving a breakthrough now. If your concentration can reach the Tier 4 standard, it'll be a great help to the guild. Aqua and the others will be happy to see that as well, Faux assured her. Giving the potions to someone else might be fine if Violet Cloud's concentration was still a long way from reaching the Tier 4 standard. However, since she was only 20% short of reaching the Tier 3 limit and her Divine Will absorption rate was only slightly inferior to his own, the 2 additional Master Concentration Recovery Potions might help her cross the threshold. Knowing this, he would naturally give both bottles to her. After all, so long as Violet Cloud's concentration reached the Tier 4 standard, Zero Wing would gain another true powerhouse. Guild leader, I definitely won't disappoint you and everyone else. I'll make sure my concentration reaches the Tier 4 standard by the time we leave Lightforged City. Violet Cloud said with determination as she accepted the 2 potions. She then returned to her training spot and focused fully on resisting the approaching mental assaults. As for Faux, he made his way to a quiet corner and shifted his attention to his bag space. Now that my concentration has reached the Tier 4 standard, it should be enough to accept this legacy. Feng's eyes shone with anticipation as he looked at the gigantic memory crystal sitting in his bag space. Chapter 2649, Astonishing Ancient Legacy Lightforged City, Crimson Silver Hotel. As a hotel that catered to Lightforged City's nobles, the Crimson Silver Hotel was off-limits to ordinary players and NPCs. The cost of resting in this prestigious hotel was similarly far beyond that of ordinary hotels. Any normal room within the hotel cost 300 magic crystals or 10 contribution points to rent per day. Even Crimson Star and the others, who had become nobles of Lightforged City due to the Noble Authority token, were unwilling to rest here. At this moment, however, Faux entered the hotel without hesitation, stunning the members of Violet Sword and Azure that saw him. Be it 300 magic crystals or 10 contribution points, neither was cheap. Paying such a high price just for some rest was an unnecessary extravagance. Renting a room in an ordinary hotel for the price of 30 magic crystals or 1 contribution point was more than enough. My lord, how may I be of service? A level 180 female attendant asked respectfully as she approached Faux. I wish to rent a normal room here, Faux said as he handed 300 magic crystals to the attendant. Very well, the female attendant said after verifying the payment. She then took out a crystalline key and gave it to Faux, saying, My lord, here is your room key. You may choose any of the empty rooms upstairs. After accepting the key, Faux promptly made his way to the 2nd floor and entered one of the unoccupied rooms there. As soon as he entered the guest room, the mana density inside actually started rising rapidly. Just a short moment later, the ambient mana had more than doubled already. In addition, the mana here also gave him a soothing and calming feeling. Sure enough, the mana density here is much higher than in ordinary hotels. Faux nodded in satisfaction when he sensed the room's environment. If he merely wanted some rest, he would have gone to an ordinary hotel. However, he didn't intend to rest, but to obtain the ancient legacy recorded inside the memory crystal. Hence, he could not afford to be careless. The noble hotel was much safer than the ordinary hotels in the city. This point was obvious just by looking at its attendants and guards. Every NPC here was at least a level 180, Tier 3 NPC. They were not existences current players could afford to provoke. In addition, the noble hotel was protected by a ridiculously strong fourfold, defensive magic array. Under normal circumstances, even Tier 5 existences would pose no threat to this magic array, let alone Tier 3 and Tier 4 existences. Now that Faux no longer had to worry about external disruptions, he immediately took out the memory crystal from his bag and readied himself to read its contents. The memory crystal he obtained would remain in existence for only 2 natural days. He had already spent a lot of this time raising his concentration standard. Now, he had less than 3 hours left to read it. Now that my concentration has reached the Tier 4 standard, I should be able to read it, right? Faux could not help being nervous as he tapped his finger on the memory crystal. On this trip to the ancient's secret land, his greatest harvest would definitely have to be the memory crystal. In fact, everything else he obtained from this trip couldn't even come close to half the value of this memory crystal. If he still couldn't read the information contained in it, then he really would die from heartache. In the next moment, the sound of a system notification entered his ears. System, warning. You have discovered a large memory crystal. According to your current concentration, if you read the recorded information completely, there is a very small chance you will enter a deep coma. Do you still wish to read the information? There's still a risk. Faux was stunned when he saw the system notification. Just what is in this thing? Although the Tier 4 standard was not the apex of God's domain, it was definitely above average. Even a king had to take Tier 4 existences seriously. Now, however, despite his concentration having reached the Tier 4 standard already, reading the recorded information still involved a bit of risk. This was simply unbelievable. Although there is a risk, I want to see what is recorded in this thing. Gritting his teeth, Faux chose to read the information in the memory crystal. Memory crystals that contained ancient legacies were incredibly rare in God's domain. In fact, they could be counted on the fingers of one's hands. Previously, due to the very large chance of him falling into a deep coma, Faux did not dare read the recorded information. However, now that the risk had become very small, he naturally had to try. After all, he wouldn't get another opportunity like this again in the future. After he chose to read the contents of the memory crystal, the large crystal in his hand started rapidly gathering mana from its surroundings. It then released a dazzling glow that brightly illuminated the entire room. Afterward, a beam of white light shot out from the memory crystal and into Feng's forehead. For a time, Feng sensed countless images and texts being transferred into his brain. The amount of the information was simply astonishing. It felt as if he had just plunged into a sea of knowledge. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. 1 hour. For the first half hour, Feng still felt fine after receiving the copious information. However, after the transfer process continued for 40 minutes, he felt a stinging in his head as if someone was using a needle to poke his brain. Meanwhile, as time passed, this stinging sensation only intensified. After 80 minutes into the transfer process, Feng felt as if his brain was about to explode. Right then, the beam the memory crystal released disappeared. Immediately afterward, the crystal shattered into countless fragments and vanished from the room. As for Feng, his body swayed slightly, as his mind was in a mess. And when he opened his eyes, the world spun around him. How close! If the transfer process had continued for a few more minutes, I might have fainted. At this moment, Feng felt that the system had tricked him. Despite the warning stating that there was only a very small chance for him to fall into a deep coma, he was clearly very close to breaching the mental protection system, which would have forced him into a deep coma for a very long time. Then, he would definitely die of regret. However, after resting for a few minutes, Feng started feeling much better, the pain in his head having lessened significantly. Meanwhile, the information he had received also came into focus. This is a lie, right? A small, mobile fortress design? Stunned, Feng wondered if the system was playing a joke on him when he looked at the images and texts displayed before him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU in God's domain, fortresses were much more valuable than towns. After all, aside from providing players with a place to rest, fortresses possessed far greater offensive and defensive capabilities than towns. They were shelters made for all kinds of warfare. Even a small fortress could easily fend off the assault of a large number of Tier 4 existences. Moreover, fortresses had much lower production costs and operation costs, hence, they had been highly popular among the various powers in the past. During Shifeng's previous life, over 70% of the player's shelters found in level 100+ maps were fortresses. However, the design currently displayed before him was a cut above even ordinary fortresses. In fact, even during his previous life, he had the fortune to witness such constructions only a few times. This construction was the mobile fortress. It was a fortress that could drive countless powers crazy. Chapter 2650, Small Mobile Fortress. No wonder the recorded information is so massive. Thankfully, the information is only for a small mobile fortress. Had it been for a medium mobile fortress, even concentration at the peak of Tier 4 wouldn't have been sufficient to read it. Realization dawned upon Shifeng when he saw the details regarding the small mobile fortress design. On the surface, the difference between a normal fortress and a mobile fortress might not seem very large, with one stationary and the other mobile. However, the difference distinguishing them was far from just mobility. In the construction of a normal fortress, the construction materials had priority, while magic arrays were secondary. For a mobile fortress, it was the opposite. The magic arrays took priority, while materials were secondary. A mobile fortress could also be labeled a magic fortress. The two constructions were on entirely different levels of complexity. From what Shifeng could see, just the magic arrays required to construct the small mobile fortress numbered several thousand. Moreover, even the weakest of them was a basic master magic array. One could easily imagine how complex of a construction a mobile fortress was. If the design he received were for a medium mobile fortress, its complexity would be even more frightening, most likely boasting tens of thousands of magic arrays. Just thinking of this number gave him the shivers. However, when Shifeng took a closer look at the details of the small mobile fortress design, he did not know whether he should cry or laugh. A mobile fortress was something countless powers had yearned to obtain in his previous life. In fact, the superpowers had even been willing to exchange a main city for a mobile fortress. This was despite the exceptionally high difficulty of upgrading a guild city into a main city. A lot of time and effort were needed to obtain a main city. However, even when offered a main city, there had never been any power that was willing to part with their mobile fortress. After all, a mobile fortress was an aerial base. Even though a small mobile fortress's size wasn't comparable to that of a basic town, in a situation where flying mounts were incredibly rare and very few guild cities could get established in level 100+ maps, a mobile fortress was worth far more than 3 main cities. In the past, any power that possessed a mobile fortress had been a target of partnership for the various superpowers. Countless independent peak experts and top adventurer teams would also do whatever they could to gain the qualifications to enter a mobile fortress. Some first-rate guilds that were fortunate enough to obtain a mobile fortress had even instantly become pseudo-superpowers as a result. Moreover, none of the superpowers wished to offend them. Now, although Shifeng did not obtain an actual mobile fortress, he had the design to make one. Moreover, as an intermediate master magician, he could build a mobile fortress now and instantly stabilize Zero Wing's position in God's domain. This was definitely a matter worth celebrating. However, after studying the design, Shifeng also discovered a headache. While he indeed possessed the mobile fortress design as well as the necessary skills to construct it, the mobile fortress's material cost was stratospheric. Setting aside the various materials necessary for the several thousand magic arrays, just the materials for the basic structure of the mobile fortress were already more than enough to make any superpower in the current God's domain faint. 8 million magic crystals. 30,000 mana stones. 2 million pieces of mana ore. Although these were all generally available on the market, the amounts required were not something ordinary superpowers could afford. Not to mention, the construction of the small mobile fortress also needed various other valuable materials such as magic metal. By Shifeng's rough estimates, completing the small mobile fortress would cost a minimum of 50 million gold. Let alone ordinary superpowers, even veteran super guilds would need a long time to collect such an enormous sum of money. Ordinary superpowers would be fortunate to have a liquid fund of 3 or 4 million gold. Even 10 ordinary superpowers combined wouldn't be able to fork out 50 million gold unless they sold off their assets. However, doing so would be akin to putting the cart before the horse. Before they could even finish constructing the mobile fortress, they would have caused the collapse of their guilds already. Most importantly, coins weren't the main problem. After all, coins were the most basic form of currency in God's domain. However, it was a different story for magic crystals, mana stones, and mana Oregon. Aside from being hard currency, they were also essential items for players to get by. Whether it was now or in the future, this fact would remain true. Hence, the difficulty of obtaining all these materials was much greater than the difficulty of accumulating 50 million gold. Since the minimum material cost alone is already 50 million gold, it's no wonder no powers were willing to sell their mobile fortresses and would even refuse to accept main city-ranked guild cities. If it were up to me, I definitely wouldn't make such an exchange either. Faux could not help a bitter smile when he saw the list of required materials. The value of a main city-ranked guild city indeed surpassed 50 million gold. However, 50 million gold was only the material cost of a small mobile fortress. Moreover, this was under ideal market conditions. Magic crystals, mana stones, and mana ore were in low supply and high demand in God's domain. Just collecting the necessary amount to construct a small mobile fortress would most definitely cause a shortage, which would, in turn, raise their prices. In the end, the material cost would definitely far exceed 50 million gold. In fact, 100 million gold might not even be enough to pay for all the necessary materials. After factoring in the time and labor costs, one would make a loss if they sold their mobile fortress for less than 200 million gold. With Zero Wing's current strength, obtaining the required magic crystals and mana stones shouldn't be a problem. It'll just take some time. However, gathering 2 million pieces of mana ore is a problem. With the Philosopher's Stone's help, he could easily convert magic crystals into mana stones. Overall, he needed just 9.5 million magic crystals, which shouldn't be a big problem for the current Zero Wing, as the guild was earning a large amount of magic crystals through the Starlight Fortress, Stone Forest City, and the Dark World's teleportation gate. However, it was a different story for mana Oregon. On the surface, mana ore was cheaper than magic crystals. Ordinary players normally wouldn't have any use for mana Oregon. Only the various powers would occasionally make use of it to construct buildings. However, the production of mana ore was also significantly lower than that of magic crystals because mana ore was an associated ore with only a certain chance of appearing when harvesting ores containing dense mana. In addition, the various superpowers were treating mana ore as a strategic resource and would not sell it unless absolutely necessary. The difficulty of collecting 2 million pieces of mana ore was far greater than the difficulty of collecting 9.5 million magic crystals. Although we currently have an alliance with the Azure Chamber of Commerce and can also source some from the Secret Pavilion, purchasing such a large amount of mana ore will definitely attract the attention of some superpowers. If these superpowers start interfering, it'll become even more difficult to collect mana Oregon. It seems I have to secure some grade 2 or grade 3 ore veins. If he tried purchasing the uncommonly used mana ore in bulk, just the price inflation alone would already present a problem. Currently, due to a sharp increase in member count, Zero Wing's daily expenditure had likewise increased substantially. He also needed funds to support the development of the guild's Night Legion, towns, cities, and airport. Now, let alone purchasing 2 million pieces of mana ore, Zero Wing didn't even have the funds necessary to purchase 500,000 pieces. Then, when the guild's members started challenging their Tier 4 promotion quest, the guild would also have to invest a lot of funds and resources to assist them. Overall, Zero Wing was extremely short of funds right now. The only way he could secure a large amount of mana ore now was to acquire a grade 3 ore vein or better. That way, not only could he obtain a long-term supply of mana ore, but he also wouldn't have to worry about interference from the various superpowers. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, as Faux was pondering how to go about obtaining such an ore vein, he suddenly received a call request from Aqua Rose. Guild leader, something big happened to the Purple Thorns Kingdom. Aqua Rose reported anxiously. something big happened? What is it? Feng asked, curious. Due to the Demon God's Chaos Expansion Pack, the entire God's domain had fallen into turmoil, and guild wars were being waged daily. With how large the Purple Thorns Kingdom was, it would be strange if nothing happened there. The Purple Thorns Kingdom is no more. Chapter 2651, Kingdom perishes, the Purple Thorns Kingdom is no more? How did it disappear? Feng was momentarily stunned when he heard Aqua Rose's report. Although there were over 100 kingdoms in God's domain, the strength these kingdoms possessed was no trivial matter. In the case of the Purple Thorns Kingdom, it was average among the various kingdoms in existence. Although it was smaller than Star Moon Kingdom, its national power was only slightly weaker than that of Star Moon Kingdom. Hence, Feng found it hard to imagine that there would be anything capable of destroying a kingdom like the Purple Thorns Kingdom. In the past, kingdoms had started rising and perishing only when quite a number of players had already reached Tier 4 and were preparing to challenge their Tier 5 promotion quest. In the current God's domain, however, let alone preparing to challenge the Tier 5 promotion quest, there wasn't even a single Tier 4 player in existence. It was utterly impossible for players to destroy an entire kingdom. If not for Feng knowing that Aqua Rose would not joke about such an important matter, he really would think that she was kidding him. We still don't know the exact details. All we know is that the entire Purple Thorns Kingdom has been isolated from the outside world. According to the players that managed to escape from the kingdom before its isolation, powerful monsters had suddenly appeared in the Purple Thorns Kingdom, and these monsters were aggressively targeting players. At the same time, all NPCs at Tier 3 and above within the kingdom's NPC towns and cities had either disappeared or were placed in a strange state where they could not do combat. As a result, these newly appeared powerful monsters quickly overran the various NPC towns and cities. Moreover, any players killed by these monsters lose 10 levels and have their souls placed in an extremely weakened state, preventing them from logging into God's domain for 10 days. As for the corpses of these players, they are turned into either monsters themselves or food to strengthen these monsters. This incident has already shaken the entire Eastern continent. Every power is sending people to investigate this matter. The Black Dragon Empire and several kingdoms neighboring the Purple Thorns Kingdom have even dispatched their NPC armies to the Purple Thorns Kingdom's border to investigate. However, until now, nobody has managed to obtain any information. On the contrary, the players sent to investigate ended up getting ambushed and killed by the monsters there. Aqua Rose was similarly shocked when she received the news. She never thought that an incident like this would actually happen in God's domain. It might be understandable if it were an NPC city that suffered destruction, but the annihilation of an entire kingdom was simply unimaginable. Moreover, even now, nobody knew what exactly had happened to the Purple Thorns Kingdom. This situation made the players operating in the neighboring kingdoms and empires nervous, afraid that their country would become the next Purple Thorns Kingdom. If that happened, then all the time and effort they'd spent establishing a foundation in their respective countries would be wasted. The various powers that had been developing in the Purple Thorns Kingdom, in particular, were close to going crazy now. In order to develop in the Purple Thorns Kingdom, the various powers had purchased large tracts of real estate there. They had even constructed numerous guild towns and cities. However, because of the Purple Thorns Kingdom's fall, all of these investments were gone. Many guilds had even collapsed because of this incident. Just thinking of this matter made Aqua Rose shudder. Killed players are turned into either monsters or food that goes to improving the monsters. When Feng heard Aqua Rose's statement, the name of one person came to mind. However, he soon shook his head in denial. Although Beast Emperor possesses the evil god's legacy, he shouldn't be capable of rendering so many powerful NPCs incapable of combat and even destroying the Purple Thorns Kingdom. In the past, the evil god's temple had indeed caused many problems for the Eastern continent. However, by the time the evil god's temple had become a real threat, quite a number of players had already reached Tier 4. Moreover, the evil beasts of the evil god's temple required a lot of time to build up their strength. In fact, let alone the current evil god's temple, even when the evil god's temple had been at its peak in the past, it couldn't destroy an entire kingdom so quickly. Guild leader, because of this matter, the entire guild is in chaos. Many hidden powers are trying to take advantage of this situation. The players and powers that escaped from the Purple Thorns Kingdom, in particular, are now waging war over the various resource spots in Starmoon Kingdom. The entire Starmoon Kingdom is in a mess, Aqua Rose said in frustration. Moreover, many of Starmoon Kingdom's players have started migrating to other kingdoms and empires, which has led to a drop in the player populations of the kingdom cities. The kingdom's economy is now plummeting, I understand. Have Fire and the others get ready. We'll return to Starmoon Kingdom immediately, Faux said, nodding. Originally, he had planned to partner with Azure to visit the neutral sea zone off the Silvermoon Empire and see if they could occupy one of the islands there. If he had a guild town in that neutral sea zone, it would serve as a foundation for Zero Wing to develop its naval strength on the western continent. At this point, the accessible resource spots on the main continent were mostly occupied already. There were barely any resource spots left for Zero Wing to claim. To develop on the western continent, Zero Wing would have to occupy a level 100+ neutral map or develop out at sea. However, establishing a foothold in a level 100+ neutral map was easier said than done. Not even the local superpowers could pull it off. Hence, Faux had decided to let Zero Wing develop in the western continent's neutral sea zones. Given the current situation, however, it would seem that his plan was no longer viable. What about Violet? Her concentration should be close to reaching the Tier 4 standard already. If we leave now, Aqua Rose had to ask. Let her stay here and continue training. The rest of us will head back first, Faux decided. Moreover, we also need a powerful expert to safeguard our territories here on the western continent. I understand. I'll contact Fire and the others now and have them get ready, Aqua Rose said before disconnecting the call and gathering the other members of Zero Wing. As for Faux, he did not idle around but contacted Duan Hanshan right away. Guild leader Black Flame, seeing as you're contacting me so suddenly at this time, you've probably received news about the Purple Thorns Kingdom as well and wish to have Azure help you return to the eastern continent, right? Duan Hanshan said, smiling as he caressed his beard. Elder Hanshan really is amazing. That's right. We plan to return to the eastern continent. However, trying to send back 100 players is a little difficult for us, so we'll need your chamber's help, Faux said, nodding. Of course, we will pay the fees according to market price. Currently, the interactions between the two main continents were growing. Some superpowers capable of intercontinental travel had even started offering teleportation services. Ordinary powers still lacked the qualifications to utilize these services. However, now that Zero Wing and Azure were allies, Azure naturally wouldn't refuse to teleport Zero Wing's members back to the eastern continent. Guild leader Black Flame, you're being too polite. Our two guilds have just become allies, so let's just set the fee aside, Duan Hanshan said, waving his hand. We only hope that we can send some of our guild's young talents to interact and train at your guild. May I know if guild leader Black Flame can do us this favor? Of course, that won't be a problem. Only by interacting with each other can we improve more quickly. This is a good thing for both of us. How can I possibly refuse? Faux replied, slightly surprised by Duan Hanshan's proposal. He never thought that the Azure Chamber of Commerce would consider such an action. This offer was good news for Faux. After all, he was basically getting free labor. Moreover, he could tell that Azure was expressing its goodwill to Zero Wing. He naturally wouldn't reject such an offer. In that case, thank you, Guild leader Black Flame, Duan Hanshan said. Afterward, all you need to do is head to Purple Light City with your team. Solitary Frost and the others will bring you all to the teleportation point. All right. Faux nodded before disconnecting the call. He then left the guest room he rented and made his way to Lightforged City's teleportation plaza. After Zero Wing's members gathered at the teleportation plaza, they promptly left the ancient secret land. Solitary Frost's team of 40 then led Zero Wings members toward a teleportation point leading to the eastern continent. Guild leader Black Flame, given the number of people this time, we can only make use of this random teleportation array. When it activates, everyone will be teleported to a random location on the eastern continent. So, we'll have to travel to Starmoon Kingdom independently, Solitary Frost said as he pointed at the ancient ruin before them. That won't be a problem, Faux said, nodding. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU of the teleportation arrays that allowed intercontinental travel, the ones capable of teleporting a large number of players generally did not have fixed destinations. Although this feature was somewhat troublesome, this trouble was nothing compared to the benefits one could gain from intercontinental travel. Seeing that Faux had no objections, Solitary Frost took out a key and activated the ruin's teleportation array. Immediately, a gigantic black hole appeared in the middle, rapidly depleting the ambient mana. Quick! This teleportation passage stays open for only 15 seconds. Once it disappears, we can reactivate it only after 10 days. Solitary Frost said hurriedly. After Solitary Frost's warning, Faux and the others promptly jumped into the black hole and disappeared from the ancient ruin. Chapter 2652, Eastern Continent. God's Domain, Eastern Continent. In a vast desert, a black hole with a 6-meter radius suddenly appeared. All mana within a 50-yard radius promptly surged toward it as if summoned. In the blink of an eye, the area around the black hole became a manaless area that players could not survive in. At the same time as this manaless area formed, a figure emerged from the black hole and landed on the sandy ground. Although the vicinity was devoid of mana, the body of this figure was actually wrapped in a dense layer of mana and remained utterly unaffected by the harsh environment. I'm finally out. Faux stared in disgust at the gradually dissipating black hole. That ancient ruin's random teleportation array is simply a scam. Other random teleportation arrays teleport players directly to their destination, yet this one actually makes players go through a spatial maze first. If I couldn't fly, I would have most likely been stuck inside that spatial maze for about 5 or 6 hours. He had used random teleportation arrays in God's Domain before, but this was definitely the first time he had come across such a bizarre random teleportation array. Entering the black hole on the western continent transported him into a gigantic spatial maze, and he had to search for the exit himself. However, that still wasn't the worst part. What was worse were the many void creatures inside the maze. Fortunately, these void creatures were only around level 120, and the majority of them were at the Great Lord's standard only. Moreover, he possessed Gale Domain, which granted him the ability to fly, so he was able to easily shake off the monsters chasing after him and search for the exit quickly. After inwardly grumbling a little, Faux took out a return scroll for White River City. He wanted to take a look at White River City's condition immediately. However, when Faux unfurled the return scroll and started activating it, the sound of a system notification immediately entered his ears. System, a strange energy is sealing this area. All forms of teleportation cannot be used here. I can't teleport here? Faux frowned upon seeing this notification. Was I unlucky and got teleported to a forbidden land? In God's Domain, aside from some special locations, forbidden lands were the only places that prohibited the use of return scrolls. Meanwhile, the chances of a random teleportation array sending players into special locations were 0 because such locations had to be entered using specific methods. As for forbidden lands, they only prevented players from teleporting out of them and not into them. It seems I have no choice but to fly out of this place. Having no better option, Faux stored his return scroll and took out the Thunder Eagle's summoning flute. However, a second after he tried to summon the Thunder Eagle, he was dumbfounded once more. System, a strange energy is sealing this area. Flying mounts cannot be used. What is this place? It actually prohibits the use of flying mounts? Faux was truly stunned when he saw this system notification. As far as he remembered, forbidden lands generally did not prohibit the use of flying mounts. Those that did were usually level 150 plus forbidden lands. Even with his current self, he would not dare set foot into such high-level forbidden lands. The main reason for this wasn't him lacking levels but the possibility of Tier 5 world bosses spawning in level 150 plus forbidden lands. Against a Tier 5 world boss, even a player of his caliber would be no different from an ant. While Faux was grappling with this headache, a weak ripple of mana came from far away. He turned reflexively to look at its source, but the only thing he could make out was a bunch of ant-like figures fighting in the distance. By his estimates, those figures should be more than 1,500 yards away. What's going on? Faux was stupefied by this situation. For Tier 3 players, 1,500 yards was already the very limit of their visual range. At such a great distance, unless the other side was using large-scale destruction spells influencing a radius of several hundred yards, he shouldn't be able to sense any mana fluctuations from his position. However, such spells were definitely beyond the capabilities of Tier 3 magical class players. And from what he could see, the figures in question weren't using spells of such scale and power either. Is this an effect of having Tier 4 concentration? After giving the matter some thought, Faux could think of only this explanation for this situation. This discovery astonished him. No wonder I was never able to escape Tier 4 players once I got discovered. A perception range of 1,500 yards. This perception range was already on superhuman levels. The perception range Tier 3 players possessed couldn't even come close. Previously, no magical battles had taken place in his vicinity after his concentration had reached the Tier 4 standard. Moreover, he had been in a mana-rich environment, so he didn't sense any particular changes to his perception of mana. However, now that he had arrived in a place with very thin mana, he became extraordinarily sensitive to the changes in mana. Nonetheless, Faux did not dwell on the matter. With quick steps, he made his way toward the origin of the mana fluctuations since he could sense that the cause of these mana fluctuations were players. With the system map inaccessible, he couldn't tell where he was right now. Hence, collecting information about his current location was of utmost importance. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know how he could return to Star Moon Kingdom. Meanwhile, players were undoubtedly the best source of information. A short moment later, Faux arrived on a sand dune roughly 400 yards from the battlefield. Standing on the sand dune, he had an unobstructed view of the entire battlefield. Sure enough, they're players. Currently, a 200-man team of players was fighting several dozen strange monsters while protecting a dozen or so carriages and a group of NPCs. Faux Saint Saboteur, Elemental Creature, Great Lord, Level 112 HP 120 000/120 000/000. Faux Saint Destroyer, Elemental Creature, Grand Lord, Level 114 HP 450 000/450 000/000. The bodies of these strange monsters were pure white, looking like white statues. Every one of these monsters brandished weapons and wore armor. Although they weren't very high-leveled, every one of them was using spells in combat. Moreover, they also possessed very high combat standards, with even the weakest among them at the 5th floor trial tower standard. As for the players fighting these monsters, they were all at level 110 or above. Although these players were coping against these monsters, it was obvious that they were at a disadvantage. If not for the team's 8 Tier 3 experts holding off the 2 Faux Saint Destroyers, the team would have long since suffered annihilation. Vice Commander Wind, we can't continue like this. 2 destroyers are already far beyond our capability, the male Tier 3 shield warrior tanking one of the Faux Saint Destroyers said as he turned to look at the female Tier 3 swordsman tackling the other Faux Saint Destroyer. The female swordsman in question was clad in crimson armor and wielded 2 swords. By relying on her profound footwork, she managed to evade the Faux Saint Destroyer's spells one after another. Occasionally, she also landed an attack on the Grand Lord and dealt some damage. From her performance, it was clear that she was at the Flowing Water Realm standard. After putting some distance between herself and the Faux Saint Destroyer before her, the female swordsman replied, "I know. I've already contacted the commander for reinforcements, but the commander's team is still some distance away. They'll need around 2 hours to reach us. 2 hours? We won't last that long, the Tier 3 shield warrior exclaimed, exasperated. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU currently, although they were pinning down the 2 Faux Saint destroyers, the rest of the team had their hands full with the Faux Saint saboteurs. Overall, their entire team was barely doing any damage to these monsters. Meanwhile, at the rate they were expending stamina, they wouldn't last more than an hour against these monsters. In regard to this situation, the female swordsman also could not help feeling frustrated. If it were possible, she would have given the command to escape. However, these Faux Saint monsters possessed an incredibly wide perception range. So long as players came across them, it was basically impossible to escape them. And even if they disregarded this fact and tried to flee, they would simply be making things worse. After all, this entire desert that they were in teemed with Faux Saint monsters. It was very easy for them to attract the attention of more Faux Saint monsters and put themselves in a worse situation. Just as everyone in the team was despairing, a voice suddenly entered their ears. I'll lure these 2 grand lords away. The rest of you focus on getting rid of the great lords. Chapter 2653, Repelling Faux Saints. Upon hearing this voice, the merchant fleet's 200 players promptly turned to look toward its origin. What entered their sight was a cloaked swordsman carrying 2 long swords, who was rapidly closing in on their position, his speed surpassing even that of Tier 3 assassins. So fast. Solid Wind, the female swordsman, was surprised when she saw this swift figure. She never thought that they would actually come across other expert players in this desert. However, before anyone could react to this situation, this swordsman had already arrived before one of the 2 Faux Saint destroyers. Upon noticing Faux appearing before it, the destroyer promptly raised its greatsword and smashed down at him. The descending greatsword split into 3 sword lights that struck at Faux from different directions, each of the sword lights leaving a spatial tear in its wake. Be careful. You mustn't receive this move, no matter what. Solid Wind warned hurriedly when she saw the descending sword lights. The Faux Saint destroyer was ostensibly a Grand Lord, but the skills and spells it used could exhibit power at the Tier 4 standard. Moreover, its assault was generally relentless. Once it started attacking, it would continue chaining attacks one after another. So long as players revealed a hole in their defense, the Faux Saint destroyer would use its strongest move to target said weakness. Meanwhile, the Faux Saint destroyer's strongest attack was something even Tier 3 peak experts had difficulty dodging. A hit from this move would instantly kill even a Tier 3 metric tons. However, when Faux went up against the Faux Saint destroyer's attack, he actually showed no intention of dodging. Instead, he unsheathed the pitch-black longsword hanging at his waist and took the initiative to meet the attack. Did he not hear Vice Commander Solid Wind's warning? The Tier 3 shield warrior who was tanking the other Faux Saint destroyer was startled when he saw Feng's actions. In regard to this situation, the other Tier 3 experts on the team also could not help shaking their heads and sighing. Even their commander, who was their adventurer team's strongest expert, would not dare receive this move directly, choosing to dodge it instead, before launching a counterattack. After all, so long as one clashed with this move, holes would inevitably appear in one's defense. If that happened, even 2 or 3 healers would not be enough to keep one alive. Although everyone present wished to help Faux, the Faux Saint destroyer's attack was simply too fast. Nobody would make it in time. Damn it. Solid Wind gnashed her teeth when she saw this scene. They had just gained the help of a Tier 3 expert. While having an extra Tier 3 expert might not change the overall situation, it would increase the team's combat power and let them survive longer. With the swordsman's help, they might even be able to hold out until their commander's team arrived. Now, however. Boom! The loud clash of metal against metal thundered. At the same time, a frightening shockwave swept into the surroundings, creating a miniature sandstorm around its epicenter. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, they did not see the swordsman's figure flying out of the sandstorm. Instead, the situation inside the sandstorm became strangely calm after the initial collision. When the sand settled, what entered everyone's eyes was the scene of Faux standing there quietly, his pitch-black longsword pushing against the Faux Saint Destroyer's silvery white greatsword. At this moment, not only was Faux unharmed, but he was still in his original position. He blocked it? How was that possible? Everyone's eyes nearly fell out of their sockets when they saw Faux unscathed and in place. The move the Faux Saint Destroyer just used carried power at the Tier 4 standard. Even a Tier 3 metric tons would stumble several steps backward when receiving this attack with their shield. However, far from making Faux stumble, the Faux Saint Destroyer's greatsword actually failed to budge his longsword by even an inch. It was as if the destroyer's greatsword had just smashed into an impenetrable wall. The most frightening thing about all of this was that Faux had used only one hand to stop the Faux Saint Destroyer's attack. How high is his strength? After seeing this astonishing scene, Solid Wind paid closer attention to Faux. Even her commander, who was fully geared in top-tier dark gold equipment and wielded an epic weapon, would not dare receive a Faux Saint Destroyer's attack directly, yet Faux blocked the attack so casually. This was simply unbelievable. However, before anyone could react to the situation, Faux swung the abyssal blade once more and sent a perfect crescent cutting at the Faux Saint Destroyer before him. Failing to defend itself in time, the destroyer took the hit and stumbled 5 steps back. At the same time, a damage exceeding -300,000 appeared above its head. The damage from Feng's attack was more than 5 times higher than what Solid Wind and the others managed to cause. Immediately afterward, Feng sent a crescent arc flying at the other Faux Saint Destroyer. This time, though, the targeted destroyer reacted in time, interposing its greatsword. Pung! The instant the crescent arc came into contact with the greatsword, the impact lifted the targeted Faux Saint Destroyer slightly off the ground and sent it flying 5 yards back. By the time the Faux Saint Destroyer managed to stabilize its body, silence filled the entire battlefield as the 200 players guarding the merchant fleet gaped in shock at the scene that had just taken place. Strong. Feng was simply too strong. The 2 Faux Saint Destroyers alone were more than capable of annihilating their 200-man team, yet Feng had suppressed both of them with just 2 casual moves. He was absolutely inhuman. Leave these 2 Faux Saint Destroyers to me. The rest of you quickly take care of those saboteurs. Feng shouted when he saw that everyone was staring at him in a daze. Got it. Upon hearing Feng's reminder, everyone promptly snapped out of their daze and resumed fighting the Faux Saint saboteurs without hesitation. In less than an hour, because of Feng pinning down the 2 Faux Saint Destroyers, the team was able to finish off 70% of the Faux Saint saboteurs present. After seeing that the tide of the battle was turning against them, the 2 Faux Saint Destroyers actually quit the field without hesitation. As for the surviving Faux Saint saboteurs, they similarly scattered and fled as well. They're escaping? What are these monsters? Feng was surprised to see the Faux Saint monsters fleeing. He had seen monsters abandon fights before. However, those monsters would generally turn tail only when their HPs had fallen to a critical level. On the other hand, the Faux Saint monsters that fled still had most of their HP. The 2 Faux Saint Destroyers, in particular, were basically still at full HP. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. We don't know what exactly these Faux Saint monsters are. We only know that they came from Star Moon Kingdom's side. Moreover, every one of them possesses extremely high intellect. So long as they see that they have no chance of winning, they will scatter and flee immediately. This is especially true for those Faux Saint Destroyers. Even now, we haven't heard of any team killing one, Solid Wind explained when she saw the confusion on Feng's face. They came from Star Moon Kingdom? Solid Wind's words surprised Feng. Curious, he asked, Vice Commander Wind, could we be very close to Star Moon Kingdom? As far as he knew, there were no maps close to Star Moon Kingdom that prohibited the use of teleportation, flying mounts, and the system map. Once we cross this desert area, which is in the Orc Empire, will arrive at Star Moon Kingdom's fallen border, Solid Wind said as she eyed Shifeng strangely. After all, this information was common knowledge already. The Orc Empire? Star Moon Kingdom's fallen border? Shifeng grew even more confused at Solid Wind's words. Wasn't it the Purple Thorns Kingdom that has fallen? Chapter 2654, Obsolete Zero Wing? Upon hearing Shifeng's question, Solid Wind and the others gave him strange looks. Am I mistaken about something? Shifeng asked, puzzled by their reactions. The information Aqua Rose reported couldn't be false. Moreover, Duan Hanshan had also mentioned the matter of the Purple Thorns Kingdom falling. Even if Aqua Rose received the wrong information, there was no way a super guild like the Azure Chamber of Commerce would as well. You're not wrong, Solid Wind said, shaking her head. It's just that the fall of the Purple Thorns Kingdom happened 9 days ago. 9 days ago? Shifeng was stunned by Solid Wind's words. For a moment, he wondered if she was trying to trick him. According to the information Zero Wing received, the Purple Thorns Kingdom had fallen only a day ago. Even if there was an error in the information, the time gap shouldn't be this large. The Purple Thorns Kingdom indeed fell 9 days ago. The incident shook the entire God's domain back then. The players and powers based in the kingdom were truly miserable, the Tier 3 shield warrior standing beside Solid Wind said, nodding. After that incident, many of the Purple Thorns Kingdom's players and powers banded together to plunder the resources of the neighboring kingdoms. The situation was so severe that 2 wars involving millions of players were waged. Many guilds collapsed as a result, 2 of them even second-rate guilds. The various major powers based in the neighboring kingdoms panicked. That's right. And 3 days ago, a horde of monsters emerged from the Purple Thorns Kingdom and invaded Star Moon Kingdom. Fortunately, Star Moon Kingdom did not face the predicament the Purple Thorns Kingdom had. All its Tier 3 NPCs and above remained in a combat-able state. Even so, in just half a day, nearly half of Star Moon Kingdom's territory was lost and became the nests of these Faux Saint monsters, Solid Wind explained when she saw the skepticism on Shifeng's face. Even after hearing Solid Wind's sincere explanation, Shifeng remained unconvinced. However, there was simply no reason for Solid Wind to lie to a stranger like him. Moreover, everyone's expression appeared natural. It did not seem as if they were faking anything. If these people were acting, then he really would have to tip his hat off to their strength. After all, unless one was at the Void Realm standard, avoiding the perception of a domain realm expert like himself would be very difficult. Only after reaching the Void Realm standard would people be able to control the minute actions their bodies made when lying. If Solid Wind and the others were truly lying, this meant that the entire 200-man team consisted of peak experts. Not even the 5 great super guilds had so many peak experts under their command. What is going on here? Shifeng could not make heads or tails of this matter. I spent, at most, 7 or 8 hours inside the spatial maze. How did I unknowingly waste 9 days? As soon as he received word of the Purple Thorns Kingdom's fall, he had hurried back to the eastern continent without hesitation. He didn't even log off midway. He also couldn't have fallen asleep during the journey and slept 9 whole days away. After all, he had remained fully conscious during his entire journey. 7 or 8 hours becoming 9 days? Shifeng suddenly thought of a possibility, and his complexion darkened at this thought. Did I enter a space with chaotic time? Normally, one would experience 48 hours a day in God's domain. However, in certain special locations, time would flow much more quickly, and staying just half a day there would mean an entire month going by in the outside world. Moreover, during this entire month, players should not be interrupted lest they enter a coma and regain consciousness only after a long time. Fortunately, such cases rarely occurred in God's domain. In the past, Shifeng had only ever heard rumors of such situations happening. He never thought that he would experience it himself. In fact, there was a possibility that Aqua Rose and the others had been put into a similar situation as well. Right, Vice Commander Wind, do you know how Star Moon Kingdom's various powers are faring against the Faux Saint monsters? Shi Feng asked after recollecting himself. What was done was done. The time he lost was already gone, and there was no way he could get it back. Fortunately, Star Moon Kingdom had only partially fallen. With Zero Wing's status as Star Moon Kingdom's #1 guild and the support of Stone Forest City, Zero Wing shouldn't face too many problems. After all, aside from Zero Wing's main force members that had gone over to the Western continent, there were still Melancholic Smile, Yulan, and the others to manage things in Star Moon Kingdom. As he currently couldn't make contact with the outside world, the only thing he could do was collect as much information as possible regarding Star Moon Kingdom. The situation isn't optimistic, Solid Wind replied. Originally, these Faux Saint monsters already had a huge impact on Star Moon Kingdom. However, for some reason, the main force members of Star Moon Kingdom's #1 guild, Zero Wing, actually refused to show themselves despite such a major incident occurring. Fortunately, some of Zero Wing's partners operating in Stone Forest City came to help fight these Faux Saint monsters, allowing Zero Wing to stabilize the situation in Star Moon Kingdom, albeit just barely. However, due to Zero Wing's passivity, a power called Saint's Hand took the opportunity to rise up in Star Moon Kingdom. Not only did Saint's Hand rapidly establish itself in the many resource spots overrun by the Faux Saint monsters, but they also established plenty of guild towns. It even managed to occupy a fortress in the Orc Empire. To put it simply, Saint's Hand has created a large safe zone where players can safely develop. At the same time, Saint's Hand is also rapidly devouring the territories of Star Moon Kingdom's second- and third-rate guilds, provoking wars all over the kingdom. Moreover, the various superpowers and even the Blackwater Guild seem to be terrified of Saint's Hand. Recently, Saint's Hand even captured one of the Star Alliance's guild cities. Saint's Hand's influence in Star Moon Kingdom now exceeds Zero Wing's. I'm afraid it won't be long before Saint's Hand takes action against Zero Wing. At that time, the entire Star Moon Kingdom will be engulfed in the fires of war. After Solid Wind fell silent, everyone present could not help sighing dejectedly. They were all players of Star Moon Kingdom. They had been developing there ever since they entered God's domain. Despite the Faux Saint monsters threatening Star Moon Kingdom's continued existence, not only did the kingdom's various powers not band together to face this threat, but they had even started fighting each other with even greater ferocity. As things stood, how was Star Moon Kingdom supposed to fend off the Faux Saint monsters, which were growing increasingly stronger with each passing day? The current Faux Saint monsters were far stronger than those that first appeared in Star Moon Kingdom. Initially, the Faux Saint monsters were merely level 100 lords. Let alone Tier 3 players, even a party of Tier 2 experts could easily slay them. Now, however, the Faux Saint monsters had grown to the point where even the weakest among them was a great lord. Everyone estimated that it wouldn't be long before Mythic-ranked Faux Saint monsters started appearing. At that point, Star Moon Kingdom would surely be doomed. Saint's Hand? This is interesting. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Despite going through his memories of his past life, Shi Feng could not recall any power named Saint's Hand. However, seeing as Saint's Hand had managed to rise up in Star Moon Kingdom so quickly after the Purple Thorns Kingdom's fall, create a safe zone, and even capture a fortress in the Orc Empire, it was obvious that the guild possessed an extraordinary foundation. Friend, we are escorting this merchant fleet to Silverwing Town. How about coming with us? Currently, Silverwing Town has a Tier 4 personal guard and many powerful combat puppets. It can be considered one of the few safe areas in the Orc Empire, as well as the Orc Empire's trade hub. Our commander is quite influential in Silverwing Town. If you wish to learn some more information about the situation, you should have an easier time doing so there, the Tier 3 Shield Warrior suggested as he looked at Shi Feng. In that case, I'll have to trouble you, then, Shi Feng said and thanked the Shield Warrior for the invitation. Currently, he didn't even know where exactly he was. He also didn't know the way back to Star Moon Kingdom. It would naturally be great if he could return to Silverwing Town. When the Shield Warrior heard Shi Feng agree to his suggestion, he breathed out a sigh of relief. He then asked curiously, "Right, how should we address you, friend?" Chapter 2655, Birth of a Mythic. Upon hearing the Tier 3 Shield Warrior's words, Solid Wind turned to Faux with an embarrassed expression. Previously, she had been focused on fighting, so she had forgotten to ask for Faux's name. In fact, she had even forgotten to thank Faux for his help. Fortunately, the Shield Warrior, Crazed Bull, had taken the initiative to ask. Otherwise, their adventurer team would appear very ungrateful. "Black Flame," Faux replied calmly. "Black Flame?" Crazed Bull laughed involuntarily when he heard Faux's name. "Friend, your name is too amazing. Most likely, nobody in Starmoon Kingdom would dare show disrespect to this name." The rest of the team nodded in agreement with Crazed Bull's words. At this point in time, there was nobody unaware of the name of Zero Wings Guild leader. Let alone the Star Alliance, a first-rate guild operating in Starmoon Kingdom. Even the various superpowers had to show respect to Zero Wing now. All the players in Starmoon Kingdom knew of Black Flame's existence. However, no matter how they looked at Faux's cloaked figure, he didn't match the legendary Black Flame they knew of. They also didn't think that the guild leader of Zero Wing would come to this godforsaken place that was infested with faux saint monsters. Alright, it's just a form of address. Since he doesn't want to reveal his name, there's no need for us to pry into the matter, Solid Wind whispered through the team chat when she saw her teammates poking fun at Faux. At Solid Wind's admonishment, everyone promptly nodded and dropped the topic. After all, it was all thanks to Faux that they survived. Since Faux wished to conceal his identity, they naturally wouldn't try to delve into the matter. "We still haven't thanked you for your help just now, Brother Black Flame. In the future, if you come across any trouble in the Orc Empire or Starmoon Kingdom, please feel free to seek us out. Our blood-packed adventurer team might not be comparable to large guilds, but we are more than capable of settling small problems," Solid Wind said in gratitude as she approached Faux. "That's right. We might not be some famous top adventurer team, but we are still one of the top 20 adventurer teams operating in the Orc Empire. If you come across some wandering dark players, so long as you mention the name, Blood Pact, those dark players will generally show some respect and take a step back," Crazed Bull said confidently. "Alright," Faux said, nodding. At the same time, a bitter smile formed beneath the hood of his cloak when he saw that Solid Wind and her team did not believe him. "Let's get back on the carriages and continue on our way. Once night arrives, not only will those faux saint monsters grow more active, but Saint's Hands members will also ambush the players operating around Silverwing Town. With the little manpower we have, we definitely won't be able to defend all the merchandise," Solid Wind said as she pointed at the nearby merchant fleet. Everyone then boarded the carriages of the merchant fleet, not daring to waste any more time in this place. "Vice Commander Wind, since the faux saint monsters are more active at night, aren't Saint's Hands members afraid of getting assaulted by them?" Faux asked curiously after getting onto the leading carriage. Since Saint's Heart was trying to expand its influence in Starmoon Kingdom, clashing with Zero Wing was inevitable. Hence, he wasn't surprised that Saint's Heart was targeting the players operating around Zero Wing's territories. However, the faux saint monster's strength was no trivial matter either. It would be extremely foolish for Saint's Hand to take action in Silverwing Town's vicinity during the faux saint monster's peak period. We found this situation very strange, as well. However, it seems that Saint's Hand has developed a special tool. And when players wear this special tool, so long as they do not attack those faux saint monsters, then those faux saint monsters won't attack them either. With this tool, Saint's Heart's members can coordinate their movements with the faux saint monsters in targeting Silverwing Town. Recently, their assaults have become stronger. By the looks of it, Saint's Hand wants to capture Silverwing Town as soon as possible, Solid Wind said. However, for independent players like ourselves, we really don't wish to see Silverwing Town fall. Thus far, the guild towns captured by Saint's Hand are open only to Saint's Hand's members. Meanwhile, Silverwing Town is the Orc Empire's current economic center. If Saint's Hand manages to capture Silverwing Town, then we won't have anywhere to go. Hence, many adventurer teams and even some of Star Moon Kingdom's guilds are currently working together to assist Zero Wing in defending against Saint's Heart's assault and protecting the merchant fleets heading towards Silverwing Town. Only, due to the Faux Saint monsters growing increasingly stronger, our side has recently started to fall into a disadvantage. I don't know how much longer we can hold out like this. Aside from Solid Wind, the other players present also hated Saint's Hand with a vengeance. Currently, the various kingdoms and powers were already struggling to deal with the Faux Saint monsters, yet Saint's Hand was actually exploiting the situation, making it increasingly difficult for independent players like themselves to survive. However, despite their hatred for Saint's Hand, they were utterly powerless to do anything against the guild. In fact, even the various superpowers did not dare to oppose Saint's Hand and could only watch from the sidelines. From the conversations with Solid Wind and the others, Feng gradually understood Star Moon Kingdom's current situation. Although Star Moon Kingdom had already lost close to half of its territory, not a single main city-ranked NPC city had fallen. Even so, the situation did not look too good for the kingdom. This was because the Faux Saint monsters were growing increasingly stronger, which, in turn, prompted a large number of players to emigrate from the kingdom. At this point, White River City, which originally had a player population exceeding 10 million, now had a population of less than 4 million. The other NPC cities in the kingdom were in an even worse state. Meanwhile, the drastic decrease in player population had also caused Star Moon Kingdom's economy to contract, forcing many powers to leave the kingdom in search of greener pastures. To make matters worse, the departure of Star Moon Kingdom's major powers opened up opportunities for the various dark powers to rise up. The kingdom's dark powers had already developed to a point where normal players might lose their lives as soon as they left the protection of an NPC town or city. Overall, the situation in Star Moon Kingdom could be summed up with a single word: chaos. Most importantly, with the Faux Saint monsters growing increasingly stronger, everyone could already foresee the day when Star Moon Kingdom's main city-ranked NPC cities fell. At that time, the entire kingdom would collapse, and only those that joined Saint's Hand could avoid getting devoured by the Faux Saint monsters in the kingdom. As the merchant fleet continuously advanced, before anyone realized it, they had already arrived in a desert woodland close to Silverwing Town. Currently, at least 20 merchant fleets could be seen advancing towards Silverwing Town under the escort of players. From this, one could easily see how prosperous the current Silverwing Town was. Moreover, aside from the escorting adventurer teams, there was also an army of 10,000 players, belonging to the various large guilds, patrolling the vicinity of Silverwing Town. We're finally safe. Solid Wind breathed out a sigh of relief when she saw this guild army. The sky was already darkening. The Faux Saint monsters they had to face at this time were no laughing matter, not to mention the threat of Saint's Hand's experts. Their merchant fleet would definitely face annihilation if they came across an ambush. Today's patrol really is amazing. The Star Alliance's vice guild leader Purple Eye is actually leading it. With this, even if Saint's Hand's members attack together with the Faux Saint monsters, we have nothing to fear, Crazed Bull said, his eyes glowing with excitement as he gazed at the beautiful, crimson-robed woman leading the patrol army. The other Blood-Pact members nodded their heads in agreement with Crazed Bull when they saw Purple Eye. Nowadays, despite Star Moon Kingdom giving birth to plenty of new experts, those capable of making it to the God's Domain experts list still numbered very few. After all, players all over God's Domain were also continuously growing stronger. The difficulty of ranking within the God's Domain experts list was many times greater than before. Meanwhile, among Star Moon Kingdom's experts on the experts list, Purple Eye ranked within the top 300. According to rumors, she had obtained a powerful bloodline, and her combat power now rivaled that of monster-level experts. To top it all off, just recently, Purple Eye had even succeeded in fully unlocking her mana body. At this point, everyone in Star Moon Kingdom was already guessing that Purple Eye had already surpassed Zero Wing's Aqua Rose in terms of strength and that she was catching up to Black Flame. With such an expert protecting them, how could they not feel assured? While Blood Pact's members were quietly discussing Purple Eye, a disturbance erupted in the distance. Shortly afterward, deafening roars came from the same direction. Run! Run quickly! The Faux Saint monsters have come. Upon hearing someone shout these words, everyone in the vicinity reflexively turned to look at the origin of the roars. What entered everyone's sight was a massive dust cloud rapidly approaching. Meanwhile, within the dust cloud, they could faintly make out the figures of 6-meter-tall Faux Saint monsters, easily numbering several thousand. Everyone, quickly retreat to Silverwing Town. Our patrol will hold the rear. Purple Eye shouted when she saw the army of Faux Saint monsters bearing down on them. The patrol army promptly shifted to a defensive formation. From how calmly the patrol army's members reacted even after seeing the approach of several thousand Faux Saint monsters, it was obvious that they were all experienced experts. However, when the Faux Saint monsters arrived within 500 yards, the expressions of the patrol army's members changed. Not good. There's a mythic-ranked Faux Saint monster. Among the Faux Saint monsters present, even the Faux Saint destroyers were only 7 meters tall. However, to everyone's surprise, a 12-meter-tall figure was running amidst the monster army. The intense pressure this 12-meter-tall Faux Saint monster exuded was so powerful that even level 112, Tier 2 experts felt stifled. The Grand Lord-ranked Faux Saint destroyers were already incredibly difficult to deal with for Tier 3 experts. In fact, even peak experts had died when fighting against a Faux Saint destroyer. Nobody dared imagine how powerful a Faux Saint monster would become after reaching the mythic rank. Not to mention, aside from the mythic-ranked Faux Saint monster, the monster army also had several hundred Faux Saint destroyers and several thousand Faux Saint saboteurs. How is this possible? How can a mythic-ranked Faux Saint monster appear so quickly? Solid Wind was stunned when she saw the gigantic Faux Saint monster. We're doomed. We're really doomed this time. Crazed Bull similarly fell into despair at this situation. When facing an army of Grand Lord-ranked Faux Saint destroyers, players like themselves could still band together to fend off the monsters. However, now that mythic-ranked Faux Saint monsters had started appearing in the Faux Saint armies, it was only a matter of time before Silverwing Town perished. After all, even now, nobody had managed to kill a Faux Saint destroyer. Needless to say, killing the mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer would be even more impossible. Moreover, these Faux Saint monsters would only grow increasingly stronger as time passed. Players like themselves were helpless to stop these monsters. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Before anyone could properly react to the appearance of a mythic-ranked Faux Saint monster, the Faux Saint army had already started clashing with the patrol army. Against a mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer, even the defense of Tier 3 MTs was no different from paper. Executing a horizontal swipe with its spear, the Faux Saint Devourer easily sent the Tier 3 MTs in its path flying, the MTs losing HP rapidly. Even when Purple Eye, a level 114, Tier 3 Elementalist, used a Tier 3 curse against the Faux Saint Destroyer, the mythic monster not only blocked the attack without any difficulty but even managed to turn the force of the attack to its advantage, propelling itself toward Purple Eye at lightning speed. If not for her quick reaction, activating a life-saving skill in time, she would have been instantly killed. Brother Black Flame, let's hurry up and leave. The patrol army won't hold out for very long, Crazed Bull urged anxiously when he saw Fong jumping off the carriage. If even an expert of Purple Eye's caliber was at an absolute disadvantage, the Faux Saint army would eventually break through the patrol army's defensive line. Chapter 2656, Frightening Monster. Silverwing Town, Blue Rose Bar. As one of the few advanced bars found in Silverwing Town, not only was the Blue Rose Bar a place where experts exchanged information, but it was also a sacred place for the various well-known adventurer teams to celebrate their harvests. Hence, the Blue Rose Bar was basically crowded with players every day. At this moment, however, only a dozen or so people occupied the bar's third floor. Of the people there, even the lowest leveled was level 114, with the highest at level 115. These players also boasted excellent equipment, the weakest piece of equipment being level 110 Dark Gold rank. As for level 100 plus epic equipment that could make even peak experts drool, every one of these players had at least 2 pieces, with some of them sporting up to 4. However, compared to the levels and equipment of these people, their identity was what was truly astonishing. These players were none other than the peak experts of Crimson Emperor, a guild that was known by almost everyone in the surrounding kingdoms and empires. Meanwhile, seated at the head of this group was Illusory Words, one of Crimson Emperor's vice guild leaders. Sure enough, just like our spies in Saint's Hand reported, the mythic ranked Faux Saint Devourer that recently spawned is planning to attack Silverwing Town. A level 114 man with a fierce look said as he looked at the image on the magic mirror set up in the middle of the table. Sighing, the man continued, "It won't be long before more Faux Saint Devourers appear. With this, Silverwing Town will fall within a few days. At that time, it will be useless even if Zero Wing's main force members show up." Upon hearing the fierce man's words, the other Crimson Emperor members fell silent. The Grand Lord ranked Faux Saint Destroyers were already plenty strong. Now, even a mythic ranked Faux Saint Devourer had appeared. The strength and combat standards the Faux Saint Devourer had displayed thus far were enough to give even peak experts like themselves goosebumps. Most likely, even if their group here worked together to attack it, they would all still die. Meanwhile, once the numbers of these Faux Saint Devourers grew to around 20 or 30, they might be capable of destroying even guild cities. What is the guild leader's response to this matter? Illusory Words asked the fierce man. When she saw the Faux Saint Devourer's unstoppable rampage through the magic mirror, she could not help frowning either. The guild leader has ordered a complete withdrawal. He says that there's no need for us to accompany Zero Wing in its fight to the death against these Faux Saint monsters, the fierce man replied. A complete withdrawal? Illusory Words was a little surprised by the answer she received. Previously, their guild leader had personally dispatched Crimson Emperor's experts to help defend Silverwing Town. This indicated that he strongly supported Crimson Emperor's partnership with Zero Wing. Now, however, before Crimson Emperor's experts had even started fighting, he was actually ordering a retreat. Illusory Words found this situation unbelievable. That's right, a complete withdrawal. The current God's domain is no longer the same as before. We have a ton of matters to deal with just in the Dark Knight Empire alone. This is especially true now that Starlink's development is accelerating. At this point, Starlink already has designs on a few of our guild towns. Moreover, the situation here is obviously hopeless, so it is naturally much better if we post our available combat power to defensible locations. Unyielding Soul should be doing likewise, the fierce man explained. Do we have any new information on Zero Wing's guild leader and main force? Illusory Words asked. There's still nothing even now. I heard that Zero Wing's upper echelons have tried contacting Black Flame and the others, but their virtual gaming cabins remain under lockdown. If they sever the power to the gaming cabins, there's a very high chance that Black Flame and the others will enter a deep coma. Hence, all they can do is wait, the fierce man said, shaking his head. However, with the present situation, there's no chance of Zero Wing making a comeback. Setting aside the threat of Starlink and the Dark World, Zero Wing will have difficulty defending its headquarters in Starmoon Kingdom from the Faux Saint monsters. Nothing will change even if Black Flame and the others return. The difference in combat power is simply too large. Moreover, there's also Saint's Hand, which is eyeing Zero Wing's position in Starmoon Kingdom. Saint's Hand's origin is extremely mysterious and extraordinary. Even Blackwater's mighty Xuan Wuchisa seems afraid of it. Otherwise, with her personality, she definitely wouldn't make any concessions in the Orc Empire. I understand. However, at the rate the Faux Saint Devourers are spawning, so long as we defend together, we should be able to hold out for another 2 weeks or so. Retreating so soon is really, although Illusory Words understood what the fierce man was trying to say, she still could not bring herself to give up just like that. 2 weeks? The fierce man revealed a bitter smile at Illusory Words' statement. If we really could hold on for another 2 weeks, the guild leader wouldn't have called for a retreat right away. What do you mean? Illusory Words asked curiously. While Tier 4 combatants were indeed extremely powerful and especially useful when attacking fortified locations, with Silverwing Town's defenses and the experts like themselves present, it would take at least 20 or 30 Faux Saint Devourers to conquer Silverwing Town. According to the information we collected from Saint's Hand, when Faux Saint monsters reach the Mythic rank, not only do their basic attributes and combat power undergo a qualitative transformation, but so does their intellect as well, the fierce man said, fear darkening his eyes as he looked at the Faux Saint Devourer displayed on the magic mirror. Isn't it normal for them to gain a boost to their intellect? Illusory words didn't get the fierce man's point. It wouldn't be a problem if it were a normal improvement in intellect. However, according to Saint's Hand's information, these Faux Saint monsters gain the ability to learn once they reach the Mythic rank. In just a few minutes, they can learn the combat techniques players use. And the more experts they fight, the more quickly they improve. They are monsters in the truest sense, the fierce man explained. How is this possible? Doesn't this mean that, aside from NPCs, nobody will be able to suppress those Faux Saint Devourers? Illusory words could not help feeling that the fierce man was being too alarmist when she heard his words. Learning a combat technique was easier said than done. Even with the guidance of a complete legacy crystal, peak experts would need dozens of hours to learn a combat technique. Without any guidance, they wouldn't be able to learn a combat technique even given a month or two. Hence, how could a monster that, at most, possessed intellect rivaling that of ordinary players, learn a combat technique in just a few minutes? I didn't believe this information either, the fierce man said as he chuckled bitterly. He then sent a video recording to Illusory Words and continued, take a look at it yourself. When Illusory Words played the video recording, it showed a Tier 3 Void Realm expert fighting a Mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer. At the start of the fight, the Void Realm expert was merely at a disadvantage in terms of basic attributes. With his superior combat standards, he should be able to survive against the Devourer for quite some time. However, after the Void Realm expert cycled through a few combat techniques a few times, the Faux Saint Devourer seemingly got bored of the expert's antics and executed a basic footwork to instantly kill the said expert. And shortly afterward, the fallen expert's corpse transformed into a Faux Saint monster. How is this possible? Goosebumps rose all over Illusory Words' body when she saw the peak expert getting killed. Her reaction was because this peak expert was someone she recognized. He was none other than 100 Arms, the commander of the adventurer team Crimson Wolves, a top adventurer team based in the Black Dragon Empire. 100 Arms was an expert who was only half a step away from reaching the Domain Realm. However, despite 100 Arms having such high combat standards, the Faux Saint Devourer had actually instant-killed him. Moreover, the monster had even used 100 Arms' prided footwork, doppelganger steps, to do so. That's right. That Faux Saint Devourer learned doppelganger steps in only a minute. Moreover, the Devourer was extremely cunning while fighting 100 Arms. It didn't use its full strength at the start of the fight. Instead, it held back and squeezed out all of 100 Arms' potential, forcing 100 Arms to use every move he had. Only after seeing that 100 Arms had nothing left to offer did the Devourer kill him. The situation is similar to Purple Eyes right now, the fierce man said, breathing out a deep sigh as he watched Purple Eye clash with the Faux Saint Devourer through the magic mirror. No wonder the guild leader wants us to retreat immediately. Who could possibly be a match for such a monster? Illusory Words muttered, still in shock over the Faux Saint Devourer's intellect. With such strength and intellect, the Faux Saint Devourer simply wasn't an existence that players could handle. Only NPCs could kill such a monster. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Just as Illusory Words was about to command Crimson Emperor's members to withdraw from Silverwing Town, the movement pattern of the Faux Saint Devourer fighting Purple Eye suddenly changed. In the blink of an eye, it appeared behind the Elementalist and sent over 20 spear images stabbing at her. The move the Faux Saint Devourer had executed was one that Illusory Words was familiar with. It was another one of 100 Arms' trademark moves, the advanced combat technique Fallen Leaves. Upon seeing this move being executed, Illusory Words could not help a sigh. When 100 Arms executed this move, even Domain Realm experts couldn't stop it completely. Now that the Faux Saint Devourer had perfectly replicated the move, needless to say, a flowing water realm expert like Purple Eye stood no chance against it. However, just as Illusory Words was about to turn her gaze away from the magic mirror, a flash appeared in the mirror. In the next moment, a pitch-black wall appeared between Purple Eye and the 20-plus spear images, the spear images vanishing without a trace when they came into contact with the pitch-black wall. Chapter 2657, Clashing with the Faux Saint Devourer, it got blocked? How is that possible? That's an advanced combat technique used by a mythic monster. Crimson Emperor's members seated in the Blue Rose Bar's third floor rubbed their eyes in shock when they saw the pitch-black wall displayed on the magic mirror. For a moment, they all thought they were hallucinating. In terms of basic attributes, the Faux Saint Devourer was above average among mythic monsters of the same level. Combined with 100 Arms' Fallen Leaves technique, the power of the Devourer's attack should be capable of sending even mythic monsters flying. Nevertheless, against the pitch-black wall that suddenly appeared, the attack was nothing. The players standing on the battlefield were similarly stunned by this scene. What's going on? Is that pitch-black wall some kind of defensive spell? Isn't it a little too amazing? Everyone was surprised and confused by the pitch-black wall that had suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Not only did this pitch-black wall block the Faux Saint Devourer's attack, but it had even split the entire battlefield in half, forcing the majority of the monster army to halt their charge. Now, the Faux Saint monsters could only stand still and quietly look at the pitch-black wall before them. This is a spatial tear. Illusory Words exclaimed when she saw the pitch-black wall fading out of existence. A spatial tear? How is that possible? Even a very powerful attack would, at most, cause a thin tear stretching over a dozen yards. This wall is over 100 yards long and over 50 yards tall. Who could possibly have such strength? The fierce man refuted, shaking his head in denial. He felt that Illusory Words' conjecture was ridiculous. Everyone in the bar's third floor was familiar with spatial tears. After all, they would always come across spatial tears when clashing with Tier 4 mythic monsters. A spatial tear was the byproduct of an attack carrying too much power for the surrounding space to handle. The surrounding space would destabilize and shatter like broken glass, which was why the shape of spatial tears was generally irregular. However, the pitch-black wall displayed on the magic mirror was incredibly stable. There were no cracks in it at all. It looked like a steel wall that had just fallen out of the sky, incredibly smooth and heavy. I guess you're right. Even that person wouldn't be capable of such a feat, Illusory Words said, laughing despite herself. After giving the matter some thought, she agreed with the fierce man. Regardless, who saved Purple Eye, the fierce man wondered as he carefully tracked the pitch-black wall back to its origin. Setting aside the wall's defensive capabilities, just the fact that this person saw through the Faux Saint Devourer's movements is already plenty amazing. I doubt there are more than a handful of people in the entire Silverwing town who would be a match for this person. Did an old monster belonging to one of Zero Wing's partners take action? The fierce man's gaze landed on a cloaked man wielding a pitch-black longsword, the origin of the remarkable wall. Although he couldn't see any information about this cloaked man, his gut told him that this cloaked man possessed astonishing strength definitely at the domain realm. Before the pitch-black wall disappeared completely, the cloaked man vanished from his original location and arrived before the Faux Saint Devourer. He then stopped another spear attack from the Devourer, allowing Purple Eye to put some distance between herself and the mythic monster. Crap. Who is that guy? He actually managed to block that Faux Saint Devourer's attack. Crazed Bull exclaimed, his eyes nearly falling out of their sockets when he saw Faux successfully rescuing Purple Eye. At this moment, aside from Crazed Bull, even Solid Wind could not help goggling in shock, her mind freezing in disbelief. Previously, she already found Fang's ability to pin down 2 Faux Saint Destroyers all by himself astounding. Now, the man had even single-handedly pinned down the mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer, which even an expert of Purple Eye's caliber was no match for. Amazing. he's actually keeping up with that Devourer's speed. With this, he should have no problems handling the Devourer, Illusory Words said, her eyes glowing with excitement when she saw the cloaked man deflecting every one of the Faux Saint Devourer's attacks. If Silverwing Town has his protection, we should be able to sustain the town for some time and foil Saint's Hand's plan to solicit help from the neighboring kingdom's powers. That way, Saint's Hand's development speed will slow down, and Zero Wing will have some breathing room. If Zero Wing can continue holding out in Starmoon Kingdom, we'll have an easier time resisting Starlink in the Dark Knight Empire as well. This will only delay the inevitable. That Faux Saint Devourer will grow stronger as more time passes. Its growth speed is also no laughing matter. Not to mention, Saint's Hand has already informed the various superpowers that anyone that helps Zero Wing will become Saint's Hand's enemy, the fierce man said, shaking his head. Saint's Hand has done considerable research into the Faux Saint monsters. In the future, we'll definitely need Saint's Hand's help to deal with the threat of the Faux Saint monsters. This is also why the guild leader is having us withdraw completely. The appearance of that mysterious expert won't change anything. In fact, Saint's Hand will probably locate the power behind that mysterious expert and give that power a warning. Aside from Crimson Emperor's members, the members of various superpowers hidden in Silverwing Town also viewed this situation indifferently. Zero Wing sure is lucky. It actually managed to get the help of an old monster. I bet that old monster has yet to receive the news. Otherwise, why would he move to help Zero Wing? Although they did not know which superpower's old monster was helping Zero Wing right now, they knew that this would be the only time this old monster would do so. Afterward, Saint's Hand would definitely warn the superpower backing this old monster. Once that happened, said superpower would most likely stop assisting Zero Wing in defending the town against the Faux Saint monsters. Not only was the current era of God's domain filled with turmoil, but it was also the era of the Faux Saint monsters. Faux Saint monsters were a huge headache, even for super guilds. Moreover, stopping the spread of these Faux Saint monsters was also impossible. In the future, any guild that wished to develop safely in God's domain, be it a small guild or a super guild, would have to partner or trade with Saint's Hand. After all, up to now, no other power had managed to develop a tool that could prevent the Faux Saint monsters from attacking players. In fact, Saint's Hand even had the means to prevent the Faux Saint monsters from attacking an entire area. Now that Saint's Hand was determined to destroy Zero Wing, even the Secret Pavilion would be able to stop it, just like how the Secret Pavilion had failed to stop Saint's Hand from capturing one of the Star Alliance's guild cities. Meanwhile, as time passed, due to reinforcements continuously pouring out of Silverwing Town, the patrol army eventually gained the upper hand over the Faux Saint army. In fact, over 1,000 Faux Saint saboteurs had fallen in battle already, which made the Faux Saint Devourer anxious. In the next moment, the Faux Saint Devourer let loose a deafening roar that echoed throughout the battlefield. Immediately afterward, the Faux Saint army scattered and fled. As for the Faux Saint Devourer itself, it, too, turned around and ran off. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, sure enough, it is going to escape. Silverwing Town might have survived this time, but let's see how it's going to stop the next attack. The superpowers hidden within Silverwing Town were not at all surprised when they saw the Faux Saint army retreating. After all, with the Faux Saint Devourer thoroughly suppressed, it was only a matter of time before the Faux Saint army suffered annihilation. However, what made the Faux Saint monsters truly formidable was their ability to grow stronger with each battle they experienced. Even though Silverwing Town had successfully fended off today's attack, it wouldn't necessarily be able to repeat the feat, escape. Faux sneered when he saw the Faux Saint Devourer fleeing. Do you think you can escape? Following which, he took out the Ring of Gospel from his bag and activated Miniature World. Chapter 2658, Power of Tier 4 Concentration. When Faux activated Miniature World, the sky above the desert woodland darkened as if night had fallen. Immediately, everyone on the battlefield felt their perception of their surroundings vanish. It was as if they had been plunked into a pitch-black void with nothing in it. Moreover, aside from the players, even the fleeing Faux Saint monsters came to a halt and aimlessly turned their heads left and right, their eyes brimming with fear and confusion. Shortly afterward, a colorful brilliance descended from the sky, the lights giving off a sacred and majestic feeling. Spectators at a distance would see a gigantic rainbow barrier enveloping the entire desert woodland outside Silverwing Town. This rainbow barrier thoroughly isolated the woodland from the outside world, making the woodland look like a mirage. Meanwhile, beneath this colorful brilliance, the Faux Saint monsters started wailing in agony, one after another, their screams echoing throughout the woodland. At the same time, the intense aura they radiated waned rapidly, and even their basic attributes and reaction speed weakened to an unbelievable degree. It was as if these Faux Saint monsters that everyone originally feared had become common monsters. Seeing this scene, everyone on the battlefield was stunned. Isn't this a little too strong? He actually debuffed several thousand Faux Saint monsters to such an extent in an instant. Who is this guy? The various adventurer teams escorting merchant fleets and the patrol army fending off the Faux Saint monsters stared at Faux in astonishment. They had seen many instances of magic arrays suppressing monsters before, but this was the first time they had seen a magic array produce such a huge commotion and effect. Any random Faux Saint saboteur was more than enough to give Tier 3 experts a headache, what more the Faux Saint destroyers. Now, however, several hundred Faux Saint destroyers had been suppressed until they were just slightly stronger than ordinary Great Lords. Even ordinary Tier 3 experts could handle these Grand Lords. As for the almighty Faux Saint Devourer, it was no different from an ordinary mythic monster. In its present state, even Tier 3 peak experts could resist it for a certain period. Master magic arrays were unlikely to be able to produce such results. Moreover, the magic array Faux used spanned the entire desert woodland. At this moment, Faux himself was very surprised by the effects of Miniature World. He never thought that, after his concentration had reached the Tier 4 standard, aside from being able to exhibit the power of an advanced combat technique with his every movement, his control over magic arrays would also improve to such a frightening degree. Currently, Miniature World suppression effects could rival those of advanced master magic arrays. Despite his surprise, Faux did not pause. After activating Miniature World, he promptly charged at the Faux Saint Devourer. Under the suppression of Miniature World, the Faux Saint Devourer's speed had decreased considerably. In just 2 seconds, Faux intercepted the mythic monster and sent the abyssal blade cutting at it. Immediately, a crescent arc appeared and cut through the Faux Saint Devourer's shoulder. Failing to react to the attack in time, the Devourer got sent flying and crashed into a large tree several yards away, a damage exceeding -600,000 appearing above its head. The disparity in combat power was clear for all to see. What is that magic array? The Faux Saint Devourer actually doesn't even have the strength to fight back. The various superpowers spectating the fight from Silverwing Town gaped in shock when they saw the Faux Saint Devourer at a complete disadvantage. In fact, the Devourer's reaction speed couldn't even keep up with the swordsman's movements. Although they could tell through their magic mirrors that the Faux Saint Devourer's basic attributes had decreased by a significant margin, the Devourer should be at the standard of ordinary mythic monsters. Given its knowledge of combat techniques, its overall combat power should still be on par with that of domain realm experts. After all, the basic attributes of a Tier 4 monster was no trivial matter. However, let alone putting up a fight, the Faux Saint Devourer couldn't even defend itself against Feng's attacks, its HP continuously decreasing. It simply couldn't keep up with Feng's movements. After seeing this, everyone could already imagine what outcome awaited the Faux Saint Devourer. Death. While it might be impossible for Feng to kill the Faux Saint Devourer by himself, as the mythic monster had 1.6 billion HP, so long as a dozen or so Tier 3 experts joined him in assaulting it, the Devourer would eventually fall. Until this day, let alone killing a mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer, the various superpowers hadn't even managed to kill a Grand Lord-ranked Faux Saint Destroyer before. Now, however, Feng accomplished this miracle just by using a magic array. This was simply unbelievable. Following which, time passed quickly. Less than 10 minutes after Feng activated Miniature World, all the Faux Saint saboteurs on the battlefield had already fallen to the patrol army, while the Faux Saint destroyers' HPs were down by half. As for the Faux Saint Devourer, with Faux, Purple Eye, and several dozen other Tier 3 experts attacking it, its HP had fallen below the 70% threshold already. The players present could not help growing excited at this scene. This was especially true for the members of the various adventurer teams. After all, the Faux Saint monster's undefeated streak had finally ended. Previously, the various powers and players had been afraid of the Faux Saint monsters because the Grand Lord-ranked Faux Saint destroyers were basically impossible to kill, not to mention the Mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer. However, now that killing these Grand Lord and Mythic-ranked Faux Saint monsters was no longer a problem, not only was there hope of Star Moon Kingdom's survival, but reclaiming some of the kingdom's lost land might even be possible. Players like themselves would then be able to continue developing in the Orc Empire and Star Moon Kingdom like before. I don't know who that person is, but after this battle, the situation in the Orc Empire and Star Moon Kingdom is most likely going to change, illusory words said, the corners of her lips curling up slightly as she watched Faux suppressing the Faux Saint Devourer on the magic mirror. Previously, the undefeatable Faux Saint monsters were the main reason why the various major powers and superpowers feared Saint's hand. Now, although they had succeeded in killing only a very small portion of the Faux Saint monsters plaguing Star Moon Kingdom, so long as news of this success spread, Saint's hand would no longer be able to act in an overbearing manner as it did before. However, just when the various superpowers hidden within Silverwing Town thought that the Faux Saint army was going to suffer annihilation, several dozen lightning spears descended from the sky, shooting at Faux and the others, who were assaulting the Faux Saint Devourer. The speed and power of the lightning spears were so great that more than 20 Tier 3 experts were instantly vaporized. Along with the descent of the lightning spears, 2 magic barriers suddenly appeared around the injured Faux Saint Devourer, protecting it from further harm. The Tier 3 curse Purple Eye used failed to break through them. Before anyone could react to this turn of events, over 100 figures emerged rapidly from the surrounding forest and interposed themselves between the Faux Saint Devourer and Feng's group. Surprisingly, every one of these new arrivals radiated an aura rivaling that of Grand Lords of the same level. Who are you people? What are you trying to do? After Purple Eye saw her companions killed and the Faux Saint Devourer protected by a twofold magic array, an indescribable rage welled up within her as she glared at the 100-plus black-clad Tier 3 experts that had suddenly appeared. If not for these new arrivals exuding auras rivaling that of Grand Lords, she would have attacked them already. However, reason told her she absolutely mustn't do so. After all, so long as she took action, both she and her several dozen remaining teammates would die swiftly. At this time, a tall and bald man with golden eyes walked out of the group. Looking at Purple Eye, the bald man smiled and said, "Commander Purple, long time no see. Do you still recognize me?" With the appearance of this bald man, the atmosphere became incredibly tense. And Purple Eye's expression turned grave. "Thousand Eyes. Why are you here?" Purple Eye demanded, a tinge of fear darkening her eyes as she looked at this bald man. What is Saint's Hand trying to do? As for why she feared this bald man named Thousand Eyes, it was because he was the commander of one of Saint's Hand's 3 trump card legions. He was also the monster responsible for capturing the Star Alliance's guild city. Thousand Eyes' basic attributes rivaled those of ordinary mythic monsters. He had even instantly killed the domain realm expert that the secret pavilion sent to aid the Star Alliance. Do I even need to say it? It's because you people have gone too far. That's why we came to stop you, Thousand Eyes said. What do you mean? Purple Eye asked. It is only a matter of time before the Faux Saint monsters take over the entire eastern continent. After all, they are constantly growing stronger, and there is nothing players like ourselves can do to stop them. Our only option is to coexist with them, yet you are actually planning to kill the newly emerged Faux Saint Devourer, which is like a king to the Faux Saint monsters. If you kill the Devourer, you will only enrage those Faux Saint monsters even more. These monsters might even become more active during the day, Thousand Eyes said. Hence, we came to stop you from doing something stupid and aggravating the current situation. Thousand Eyes' words gave many of the adventurer team members present pause. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The several thousand Faux Saint monsters here were merely a small portion of the countless Faux Saint monsters within Star Moon Kingdom. Moreover, just like Thousand Eyes had said, these Faux Saint monsters were incredibly vengeful. So long as a player killed one of these Faux Saint monsters, even more Faux Saint monsters would hunt down the said player. Even if the said player managed to fend off a few attacks, the Faux Saint monsters would simply continue attacking more frequently and in greater numbers. They would not stop until they exacted their vengeance. If they really killed the Faux Saint Devourer, which was akin to a king among Faux Saint monsters, nobody could tell what the other Faux Saint monsters would do. It was entirely possible for them to grow even more violent and for their daytime activity to escalate. In fact, previously, the Faux Saint monsters had not been particularly active during the day. However, as the number of Faux Saint saboteurs that players killed increased, the Faux Saint monsters had indeed become more active during the day. They had also grown stronger much more quickly. In this situation, Purple Eye was at a loss as to what to do. As Purple Eye and the others were wondering what to do, a crisp and calm voice suddenly entered everyone's ears. What if I want to kill it, no matter what? Chapter 2659, Black Flame? When everyone heard this calm voice, they looked at its origin reflexively. Meanwhile, the person who said these words was none other than the cloaked man who had suppressed the Faux Saint Devourer and single-handedly turned the tides of this battle. Is he really opposing Saint's hand? The various superpowers members spectating from Silverwing Town were surprised by this development. They never thought that the swordsman would actually dare provoke Saint's Heart's members. Moreover, he had even spoken those provocative words to Thousand Eyes, the commander of one of Saint Hand's 3 trump card legions. The swordsman was simply too bold. At this moment, even Illusory Words and the other Crimson Emperor members seated inside the Blue Rose Bar were astonished by this situation. Although Saint's Heart's members numbered only a little over 100, which was nothing compared to Silverwing Town's patrol army, these Saint's Heart members all possessed extraordinary strength. In fact, Thousand Eyes had relied on these 100-plus players to attack and capture the Star Alliance's heavily defended guild residents. They had even killed more than 600 of the Secret Pavilion's Tier 3 experts that were dispatched to help the Star Alliance. At Silverwing Town, one could say that, unless Zero Wing's main force members took action, nobody could stop Thousand Eyes' group. But why does this scene feel familiar? When Illusory Words saw the standoff on the magic mirror, she had a sense of déjà vu. At the desert woodland, Purple Eye could not help growing somewhat anxious when she saw Fong challenging Thousand Eyes. Others might not know how powerful Thousand Eyes and his team were, but she did. After all, she had witnessed him in action before. It might be fine if they were within 300 or 400 yards of Silverwing Town, since Silverwing Town's Tier 4 personal guard could take action at that range. As strong as they were, even Thousand Eyes and his team would not dare mess around with a Tier 4 NPC. However, not only were they quite some distance from Silverwing Town, but the majority of the patrol army were currently scattered all over the battlefield. With only a little more than 30 Tier 3 experts on Purple Eye's side, even if Feng's combat power could suppress the Faux Saint Devourer, her people still wouldn't be a match for Thousand Eyes' team. The members of Thousand Eyes' team simply couldn't be considered human. They were more like a group of humanoid beasts. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared attack the Star Alliance's guild residence, which had been guarded by several hundred Tier 3 personal guards and over 10,000 experts, with just 100-plus players. Their inhuman strength was also the reason why Thousand Eyes and his team dared take action so close to Silverwing Town. As Purple Eye was growing nervous over this matter, Thousand Eyes turned to Fong. I don't know who you are, but I advise you not to look for trouble. Your strength and abilities are indeed amazing. I'm sure many superpowers will fear you. However, all of those things are nothing to Saint's Hand, Thousand Eyes said coldly. Since you wish to destroy the current balance of God's domain, I'll teach you a small portion of the consequences of doing so. As soon as Thousand Eyes finished speaking, 5 figures appeared from behind him, simultaneously activating a Tier 3 combination skill, Purgatory Storm. Each of these 5 people immediately split into 6 copies of themselves and surrounded Faux. The 30 doppelgangers then launched a synchronized strike at Faux, every one of their attacks carrying power at the Tier 4 standard. With 30 attacks coming from all directions, let alone dodging, Faux wouldn't even be able to defend himself completely. This scene surprised the various superpower spectating experts. Saint's Hand actually has a 5-man Tier 3 combination skill? Illusory Words frowned when she saw the 5 players attacking Faux. Tier 3 skills and spells were originally plenty rare already. Even the superpowers Tier 3 experts hardly had any Tier 3 skills or spells, let alone Tier 3 combination skills, which even the superpowers dreamed of obtaining. Even the weakest Tier 3 combination skill allowed players to exhibit power at the Tier 4 standard. Stronger Tier 3 combination skills could even repulse mythic monsters. Tier 3 combination skills served as a trump card against mythic bosses. However, until now, there had been no news of any superpower obtaining a Tier 3 combination skill for 5 players. Even the strongest one required only 3 players to use. Against a 5-man, Tier 3 combination skill, even the Faux Saint Devourer would not emerge unscathed. A 5-man, Tier 3 combination skill. Sure enough, Saint's Hand's foundations truly are extraordinary. That guy must be stupefied right about now. When the various superpowers spectating members saw Faux surrounded, some of them laughed in ridicule while some sighed in disappointment. Although the swordsman indeed possessed astonishing strength, just like Thousand Eyes had said, it was nothing in front of Saint's Hand. The 30 attacks, which tore space, struck at Faux simultaneously, their frightening power making even Purple Eye, who stood over 30 yards away, feel stifled. Just as the 30 devastating attacks were about to devour Faux, however, he raised the abyssal blade overhead with both hands before swinging the magic weapon at the attacks. First sword, Light Shadow. The phantom of a gigantic greatsword suddenly appeared in the air. However, compared to the previous time Faux executed Light Shadow, the phantom greatsword felt much more solid this time. Moreover, just its manifestation made the surrounding space heavy. Even the attacks approaching Faux slowed down considerably. At this moment, it was as if only this phantom greatsword was moving while everything else remained static. Boom! The 30 attacks capable of repulsing even the Faux Saint Devourer shattered instantly into countless particles of light, and the surrounding space crumbled from the terrifying force of the impact. Immediately afterward, 5 figures went flying out of the shattered space like cannonballs and crashed into the large trees over 30 yards away. Despite the trunks of the large trees having a 4-meter diameter, the 5 figures came to a stop only after ramming through several of these forest giants. And when these figures eventually landed back on the ground, their HP bars depleted rapidly and stabilized only after hitting the 30% mark. This, upon seeing the 5 heavily injured Saint's Hand members, Purple Eye gaped in shock. With just one move, Faux not only shattered the 5-man, Tier 3 combination skill but even heavily injured the 5 Saint's Hand members. The ease with which he neutralized the attack made it seem as if the 5 Saints' Hand members were not peak experts boasting basic attributes rivaling that of Grand Lords, but merely ordinary players that one could find anywhere. Who are you? When Thousand Eyes saw that Faux had survived the clash unscathed, the confidence in his eyes disappeared, replaced by surprise and confusion. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Thousand Eyes knew full well how powerful the Purgatory Storm his 5 subordinates executed was. This combination skill could block even the attack of a superior mythic. Now, however, Faux had actually shattered the combination skill and heavily injured his 5 subordinates with just one move. This was simply inconceivable. At this moment, let alone Thousand Eyes, everyone else watching the fight wanted to know Feng's identity. Who am I? Turning his gaze to Thousand Eyes, Feng retorted calmly, "You have the gall to take action in Silverwing Town's vicinity, yet you're asking who I am? Don't you think this question of yours is idiotic?" Upon hearing Feng's words, silence suddenly befell the various superpowers spectating members as they all stared at Shifeng's cloaked figure in disbelief. Black Flame? Chapter 2660, Legendary Name. When Shifeng pushed back the hood of his black cloak, a deathly silence filled his surroundings. If not for the mantle of his cloak swaying with the breeze, one would think that time had stopped. He's actually the real Black Flame? Crazed Bull's eyes nearly fell out of their sockets as he goggled at Shifeng, his body shuddering involuntarily at this discovery. Black Flame. This was a name that every superpower on the continent knew. Black Flame was an existence that had pulled off numerous miracles in battle, one that even the superpowers had great difficulty dealing with. In the hearts of independent players, he was akin to a living legend. Although Black Flame had disappeared from the eastern continent for some time now, just his prestige alone had allowed Zero Wing to continue rapidly developing on the eastern continent unharassed. Even an overbearing superpower like Saint's Hand did not dare mess around with Zero Wing and only quietly watched as the Faux Saint monsters chipped away at Zero Wing's forces. Saint's Hand did not dare directly target any of Zero Wing's guild towns or cities. Moreover, because of Black Flame's name, no superpower, aside from a few like Starlink, dared to hinder Zero Wing economically. He's back. He's finally back. Purple Eye could not help her excitement when she saw Shifeng's face. At the same time, though, an indescribable bitterness also filled her heart. Although the gap between the Star Alliance and Zero Wing had been widening all this time, Purple Eye had never given up on improving herself. She still hoped to surpass Aqua Rose and Gentle Snow one day and develop the Star Alliance into a superpower as well. However, against Saint's Hand, her power had proven utterly insignificant. In the end, she could only watch as the Star Alliance's main headquarters in Star Moon Kingdom fell. In fact, she couldn't even adequately stop the Faux Saint monsters' ambushes. Meanwhile, after a moment of silence, the various superpowers spectating members, as well as Saint's Hand's members, burst into laughter. Black Flame? Zero Wing's guild leader? So what if he returns now? He's been gone from the eastern continent for so long. Does he really think the continent is the same as before? They were indeed very surprised by Shifeng's appearance. However, that was it, nothing more. After all, Shifeng had disappeared from the eastern continent for far too long. He simply didn't know the situation the eastern continent was currently in. So, you're Zero Wing's guild leader Black Flame. No wonder you could shatter that 5-man combination skill, Thousand Eyes said, applauding as he looked at Shifeng. In the next moment, though, he sneered, but so what if you've returned? Now that the Faux Saint army has already given birth to a mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer, many more of its kind will be appearing in the future. Nobody can stop the Faux Saint army now. Do you think you can change things just because you've returned? He was familiar with the name of Black Flame. This was a monster that his guild leader had warned him to be careful of. If it were a few days ago, he would indeed be terrified of Shifeng. Now, however, let alone fearing Shifeng, he didn't even consider the swordsman a threat. Boss, why are we wasting words with him? Since he is Black Flame, we should let this old bastard know that he is already obsolete. This is no longer his era, urged Iron Tooth, formerly the chief shield warrior of the Purple Thorns Kingdom's #1 guild, Sin Realm, with a playful smirk on his face. He had always wanted to destroy the guild known as Zero Wing. Unfortunately, back then, Sin Realm was no match for Zero Wing at all. Now that he had joined Saint's Hand, however, he understood that Zero Wing wasn't a threat at all. Instead, it was merely a small stepping stone towards Saint's Hand's domination of the entire eastern continent. I guess you're right. Thousand Eyes nodded in response to Iron Tooth's words. He then looked at Shifeng and said calmly, since you're Zero Wing's guild leader, then I'll make an exception today and show you Saint's Hand's true power. After saying so, Thousand Eyes glanced at Iron Tooth, who stood beside him. At this hint, Iron Tooth excitedly approached the Faux Saint Devourer, which was behind a twofold magic array. What is he trying to do? The excited look on Irontooth's face gave Purple Eye an inkling that something was amiss. It's nothing much. He's just going to show you people what the power of the new era is like. Thousand Eyes said, a smirk appearing on his face as he looked at Purple Eye. As Thousand Eyes said that, Irontooth took out a silvery white crystal from his bag and started chanting an incantation. Suddenly, the Faux Saint Devourer let loose a roar before its body burst into countless particles of silvery white light. These particles then merged with Irontooth's body. In the next moment, Irontooth transformed into a 6-meter-tall giant clad in silver armor. The aura he radiated much stronger than even that of the Faux Saint Devourer. How is this possible? Everyone present was stunned by this scene. They never imagined that players could obtain the strength of Faux Saint monsters. Moreover, it was obvious from the eyes of the armored giant that it was Irontooth. Only, Irontooth was currently much stronger than even the Faux Saint Devourer. Previously, although the Faux Saint Devourer possessed an incredible learning ability, its combat standard wasn't very high. It wasn't capable of exhibiting its full strength. However, now that Irontooth had gained control of this strength, the combat power he could exhibit would far exceed that of the Faux Saint Devourer. Amazing. Truly amazing. So, this is the strength of a mythic-ranked Faux Saint monster? Irontooth was ecstatic when he sensed the power he currently wielded. At this moment, the other Saints' Hand members present could not help envying Irontooth. In front of such strength, players were nothing. If they could have such strength as well, they could single-handedly annihilate an entire army of players. They wouldn't even have to fear tier for NPCs. Meanwhile, the various superpowers spectating members gaped in shock at the transformed Irontooth. They hadn't suspected that Saint's Hand had kept such a powerful trump card hidden all this time. This is bad. Although Irontooth is only in the flowing water realm, with the Faux Saint Devourer's strength, let alone Black Flame, even Silverwing Town's Tier 4 personal guard might not be a match for him. Illusory Words' complexion darkened as she took in the armored giant displayed on the magic mirror. Originally, Shifeng's appearance should have been a joyous matter. With the combat power he possessed, he would be of great help in the current situation. However, Illusory Words had never imagined that Saint's Hand would have such a trump card. The strength Irontooth now wielded simply wasn't something current players could hope to go up against. And if Faux got killed at this point, his death would deal an unprecedented blow to both Zero Wing and Star Moon Kingdom. Meanwhile, after Irontooth experienced his newfound strength for a short moment, he turned around and stepped forward, instantly appearing before Faux. He was so fast that even Purple Eye failed to react to his movements in time. Black Flame, weren't you very powerful? Weren't you Star Moon Kingdom's legendary figure? Weren't you thinking of stopping Saint's Hand? I wonder how you feel about the situation now, Irontooth jeered as he looked down at Faux. Upon seeing Irontooth suddenly appear before Faux, the expressions of the patrol army's members turned indescribably grim. Even Purple Eye could not help panicking. Irontooth was simply too fast. By the time she sensed Irontooth moving, the latter had already appeared before Faux. She simply did not dare imagine what would happen when Irontooth actually took action. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. However, despite Irontooth appearing before him without any warning, Shifeng's expression remained ineffably calm. This move of yours is indeed amazing, Faux said as he shot a glance at Thousand Eyes. However, do you think you're the only ones that can transform into a monster? What do you mean? Thousand Eyes had a vague feeling that something was wrong when he saw how calm Faux was. However, before Thousand Eyes could say anything more, Faux unsheathed the abyssal blade and chanted an incantation. Black Dragon's Soul. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.